95.7 FM, AM 950, The Fan Rochester, and the free-to-download Odyssey app. Our stream is up and rolling on our YouTube channel and on Twitch. Like, follow, subscribe at The Fan Rochester. I'm Danger. That's Battaglia.
Dude, I think we made it because, yes, we have women's college basketball, the SEC tournament on our monitor, and I'm thinking that, all right, now we're going to get to the meat of college basketball. We are getting to baseball. We're getting to extended sunlight. And on Monday, Danger, legal tampering. Yes, we get to the new season of the NFL. How are you today?
Doing well today. Somewhat distracted. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it, but I know you probably want to bring it up because I've got my monitor to my right, and I've got the Minnesota State High School hockey tournament playing in the background. It's out of my line of view, so I have to strain if I'm going to look to check a score from time to time. But my high school team is in the semifinals of the state tournament.
Listen, I have experience in this area.
So do I, by the way.
Yeah, okay, yeah. When calling a game, like, I could be calling a game, and they're like, okay, and here's Fukakusa going down the middle to Wild shoots and scores, and the Tigers go up 1-0. Penn State scored, too, at the same time.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, that's kind of like, so, like, honestly, Danger, I can carry this today, buddy.
No. We're in it together, pal.
I'm kidding.
We're in it together. And we've got a great show lined up for you this afternoon here in the Sports Bar. In fact, we're going to talk to a couple of our favorites. One from Cover One, Greg Thompson. We'll talk some Buffalo Bills salary cap here and some moves being made today that we'll get to.
Yeah, we got to figure out where the Bills are at now. I've seen the numbers here for Bernard, but I don't know like how this is laid out exactly. Maybe Greg will know here, but we need to know where are the Bills at here? What do they need to do? What are some options or some candidates here perhaps that could be converting some base to bonus, if you will. We'll talk to Greg Thompson because before the Bills go shopping, they need to be cap compliant. And let's talk to our expert from Cover One coming up in the 4 o'clock hour.
Joining us later this hour, right around 3:25, our buddy from the Locked On Seahawks podcast, Corbin Smith, stops by the Sports Bar.
The Seahawks are an interesting team. First and foremost, DK Metcalf, I sent this note to him. I'm like, hey, we're salivating over him, just like a lot of other fan bases are. Why would Seattle do that? And these rumors that Pete Carroll is going to trade for Geno Smith. Have you seen these?
I have.
Yeah, it's picking up steam. Why would Seattle do that? Are they in some sort of rebuild if they're going to trade their quarterback and deal away their best offensive player? Some would say. I don't know what the plan is in Seattle, but how does it relate to the Buffalo Bills? Well, DK Metcalf, what would it take to acquire this wide receiver? We'll talk to our guy Corbin Smith, who we talked to back when the Bills played Seattle. That was back earlier in the season. He's coming up here shortly.
The Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub Wingman line is open for you. You can pull up a stool and join us here in the Sports Bar anytime this afternoon. 866-4FAN is the phone number, 585-866-4326. Award-winning barbecue from Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub, 135 West Commercial Street, East Rochester, goodsmokebbq.com.
And if you think we're going to be the show that's going to break down every NHL trade, I would just say go somewhere else. We're going to talk a lot of football here today. We'll just mention Dylan Cousins got traded from Buffalo to Ottawa today.
Ooh, that just falls below the cut of what I was saying yesterday. Like, who from the Sabres would have to get traded for us to pay attention to it? And I think I threw out like Tage Thompson, UPL, Darlene, maybe. Like
you pay attention to this not from the Buffalo side, but from the other side, because the guy coming back here, Josh Norris, I don't know a lot about. I got to be honest. Okay, he's getting paid money just like Cousins is. But apparently he was best friends with Brady Tkachuk, the best player on Ottawa, Brady Tkachuk, who we all became acquainted with during the Four Nations. Brady Tkachuk was on the verge of tears today. Oh, okay, that's not good up in Ottawa when you're trading away your best friend. So the Sabres laying down last night. I shouldn't say laying down. They scored 5 goals.
They gave up a lead. I mean, come on. It's 5 straight losses now. They're cooked.
Well, the funny part about this, and by funny, I mean it's not really that funny. It's the same thing we've been saying all along about the Sabre team. There isn't any heart. There's no fight. There's no grit. And for a team whose head coach was known for all that stuff, you would have thought maybe they would have learned lessons along the way. And there's Rasmus Dahlin in front of the net getting face washed, apparently. He's just getting pummeled. And Dylan Cousins is just standing there watching this. Like, dude, you've got to jump in. Like, is your brain turned off? I don't know. It's some are saying maybe he gets rebirth. Goodbye. See ya. Good luck to you.
Yeah. I mean, far from the glory that we saw, the one season that got him paid. We'll see if that guy has any heart in his new home, and we'll see what we get back here in return for the remainder of this season, at least moving forward from this trade here at the NHL trade deadline, which just passed about 6 minutes ago. All right, now on to the Buffalo Bills, who today announced they have agreed to a 4-year extension with their linebacker and defensive captain, Terrell Bernard.
Yeah, so Bernard, you're keeping him, right? And we kind of figured when the Bills, and we lumped this in, right? We mentioned possibly Greg Rousseau, but the Bills, had him tagged. He's probably going to play that out. The Bills can give him a new contract at any point. You have Christian Benford. You have James Cook also in this bucket. First one to go was Khalil Shakir. And we looked at Shakir, and we thought, yeah, that feels kind of right for a guy who, but by volume was the Bills' number one receiver. But by definition in the NFL, it's not a really true number one. So he's not getting paid those big bucks, but it still is a nice contract, maybe a little bit below market value. I think that's good for both sides. Until I see how this is exactly laid out here, Terrell Bernard, 4 years, $50 million. It seems like market value, but it is a linebacker position danger, and I think linebacker isn't all that difficult to find.
Just a few things to share from Spot Track with that market value. Spot Track actually has his market value well lower than what the Bills just paid him. So I'm a little bit nervous that this might be an overpay. We'll talk to Greg Thompson later and ask him his opinion. I mean, look, can you really put a price on your defensive leader, on your defensive captain? This move will make him the 5th highest paid inside linebacker in the NFL. It'll give him an average salary per year of $12.5 million. For what it's worth, Spot Track had his average annual salary market valued at $6.7 million.
But we don't know how this is laid out. Is it backloaded? Because then it's really not 4 years, $50 million. So that's what I just want to point out. They're just doing this as if you were spreading the 12.5 over 4 years. So I'm going to reserve judgment on this until we know exactly the breakout of that. I think it's just good that the Bills taking care of business, and this is where you want to start. This is what good teams do. You draft and you develop. And sometimes, Danger, we focus on the misses. We talk about, my gosh, how could you miss on Carrier Elam and some of these other players? But you did find something, and you develop on Khalil Shakir. Shakir, took a while to develop him, right? But by year 3, you realize, boy, this guy, he's slippery. He's a good part for this offense. And Bernard, year 1 didn't do anything. Year 2, we're going into camp, and we're thinking, okay, what's happening with this player here? Who's going to be the middle linebacker? Could it actually be Balin Spector? We were actually thinking that. No, the plan all along was Terrell Bernard, and once he got released, my concern with Terrell Bernard, it's, can he be on the field more often?
My concern is size. I mean, can he be on the field, but size? I mean, I'm just worried that in an NFL where you see running backs now getting bigger and teams like the Ravens, exploiting the fact that defenses have gotten smaller with bigger backs, more physical players, that a player of Bernard's size is going to struggle. But he's had a couple of nice seasons. I wanted more out of him last year. You're right. And I think, in a way, he kind of had the Bills at his mercy here. You saw what you saw from Dorian Williams when he needed to fill in, and it just isn't the same as what you get out of Bernard. $25.2 million in guaranteed money with this extension here.
Okay. All right.
So Terrell Bernard gets paid. The Bills' defensive captain gets paid before he enters the final year of his rookie contract, and the Bills have him locked up here for the next 4 years at least.
Look, if we think that's an overpay, you overpay for one of your own.
Correct. Again, my biggest concern, a couple of concerns. One, the size, but two, when I looked at the evaluation from Spot Track to see how much more the Bills paid than what his perceived market value is, according to their metrics, made me think maybe this is a little bit of an overpay. Again, we'll talk to Greg Thompson of Cover One, and we'll talk all things Buffalo Bills cap here as we get ready for the start of the league year and seeing if this team can get cap compliant with the stroke of a few pens.
I kind of want to review here. Can we do like an off-season version of our bold predictions? And by that, we're going to really tighten this up because you and I, we think we've solved all the world's problems when it came to the NFL off-season yesterday. But like, wow, talking to Dan Leberfeld, it seems kind of clear that Aaron Rodgers and the Giants make sense from both sides here. We were talking about, well, what's the first domino to go? Well, where's Sam Darnold going to go? And when you kind of go through the exercise, wait a second, the Vikings did this because they know they're going to get him back. That this is the way, rather than to hold him hostage with the tag. You do this and then come back for 1 year, and maybe you overpay a little bit on that. But to me, Danger, are we in lockstep on those two?
I am not 100% on Darnold going back to the Vikings. I think that the Vikings are crazy if they let him walk. I've said that from the moment the season ended. I think they should sign him. I'm not saying they're going to sign him. And I think ultimately Darnold's going to go, obviously, where the paycheck is the mightiest. And that could be the Giants. That could be the Raiders. If there is a deal to be made where Geno Smith goes from Seattle to the Raiders, and what does Seattle do? Maybe Seattle comes in and play for Sam Darnold. I mean, like there's still a lot of
Seattle's the weird one, yeah.
Right. There's a lot of there's a couple of free agents, a couple teams. Pittsburgh is a team that I think is worth watching. What are they going to do? We assume that they're going to bring back Justin Fields. I would imagine they feel they could probably get better than Justin Fields at some point. I would say Sam Darnold is better than Justin Fields. He's proven that he can win more games than Justin Fields has. He's certainly more clutch than Justin Fields.
Okay, focus on Pittsburgh for a second. If they bring back Justin Fields, okay. Do they also bring back – you need somebody else there, do you not?
That's my concern with Justin Fields. I would imagine that the Steelers probably believe you need some.
How about Daniel Jones?
I'll just say it right now. I think Justin Fields is a backup quarterback in the NFL. I do not think he's a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL for what that is worth. Daniel Jones, I want Daniel Jones in Indianapolis. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Okay, I'm writing down mine. You can hear me typing away, by the way. Daniel Jones.
Well, this is called accountability, folks. We're going to hold ourselves accountable, and we make our predictions now. And then when we get to the league year and we start to see some of these dominoes fall, we can say, yeah, we got it, or no, we didn't. Or we can just run it through the AI, and the AI will tell us that we got it all right, which I kind of like. That's why I'm in a very serious relationship with my AI.
I am going to go Darnold back to the Vikings, Rodgers to the Giants, Justin Fields with the Steelers, but they also bring in Daniel Jones. That's the wild card nobody's talking about. What do the Jets do? Yeah, as much as they want Tyrod, right?
Yeah.
They go with Russell Wilson.
Aaron Glenn say yes to Russell Wilson as his quarterback. Is that the kind of guy that Aaron Glenn – is that a culture builder for the Jets? I don't know about that. I actually like the idea of Russ reuniting with Pete Carroll in Vegas and the two of them working in Vegas together. I like Russell going to Vegas.
The one team I'm kind of leaving out, what do the Titans do? The Titans should not draft Cam Ward. Anybody that drafts Cam Ward in 1 or 2 overall, I think is going to regret it.
Titans be in the market for Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
You know? All right, so you're locked in on your picks. Give me the names, give me the players, and I'll give you final answers. I'm going to throw some darts here.
Okay, Darnold.
Tennessee.
Okay. Rodgers.
Giants.
Okay, we're Justin Fields.
Steelers.
Russell Wilson.
Raiders.
Daniel Jones.
Indy.
Wow. Are we missing anybody?
Let me look. We'll look at some free agents, some quarterbacks. The quarterback domino bold predictor here in the sports bar.
Mitch Trubisky.
Mitch Trubisky, my friend.
He's not back in Buffalo, I'll tell you that.
No? Who are we missing?
I think that's it, bud.
Wilson. Let me see. Free agent quarterbacks.
Minshew.
God.
No.
I mean, do you believe? We'll talk to Corbin here in a little bit, about 10 minutes or so. Do you believe that that Geno Smith could actually be in play, that they would actually move off of Geno Smith? Like, what do they have in mind if they move off of Geno Smith? Yeah, I'm looking over the list of free agents right now. Like, we're not going to make a prediction on where Zach Wilson or Jacoby Brissett ends up.
Jameis Winston.
Yeah. Where's Jameis going?
Jameis Winston.
What a treat. You know, Justin Fields, I think, is still relevant because of his age. Still young, 26 years old.
The deliberate learner is a free agent.
Oh, yeah.
Kyle Trask.
Yeah.
We talked to a reporter down in Tampa, and like to be nice, a euphemism, if you will, rather than say he's dumb, he's not bright. He's a deliberate learner. Oh, okay.
Oh, Trey Lance, but I mean, is Trey Lance a starter? Probably not. At this stage, is he a starter? He's not, right?
No.
So yeah, I think those are the starters, the starting caliber quarterbacks in free agency that could still be on the move here. Yeah, I like that. I believe with more than 50% of my heart that he's going to end up, that Darnold will end up with the Vikings, but I'm going to say Tennessee.
Okay.
I want to say Tennessee because I think Tennessee, I don't know. I mean, I feel like they could make a play. They could actually give him more than what the Vikings would be willing to offer him.
The wild card here with Tennessee, do they need to worry about selling suites and whatnot for their new stadium? They're building a dome down there. I mean, we don't talk about this as much as probably we should, how sales are going. Not too great in Buffalo, actually, but the team is winning, and they'll get it done eventually, right? Tennessee's terrible. The fact that they're picking number 1 overall, they would say, you could say they were the worst team in the league in 2024. Does that impact the box office, so to speak, there when you're building a new stadium?
It's hard for me to say because Tennessee now is starting to feel very much like a Vegas,
in L.A.
or an L.A. or a Tampa. It feels very transient now. A lot of people moving to Tennessee. It's a growth region, and if you want to go to an NFL game, it doesn't really matter if you're a fan of the team or not. You're probably going to go just because it's a new stadium. It's a new shiny toy.
It's the NFL.
It's the NFL. It's a show, right? Speaking of new shiny toys, this also came out today from Sports Business Journal. The initial cost of new Highmark was set at $1.4 billion. We all remember that. We had that conversation. We talked about the $850 million from the state and county that's getting kicked in to the construction of the new Bills Stadium. That number is now, according to Ben Fisher, is now up to $2.2 billion. And the team agreed to be responsible for all overages as part of the deal that devotes all this public money to the cause. So as of right now, the Bills are on the hook for the extra $800 million, that $1.4 billion to $2.2 billion, plus whatever else between now and the end gets added on to it. So the Bills have been looking to the NFL to seek an exception to the NFL's debt limit so that another $650 million can be borrowed. I'm telling you, Terry Pegula doesn't want to put a penny of his own money into this stadium. He's doing everything he can to make sure he doesn't spend a penny on this new stadium. It's amazing.
It's funny, like, if it were me or you or anybody else, like, all right, I need to pay for this. The way they manage the Bills and the way they manage the Sabres, it's like it's two different entities. It's like an Innie and Outie if you watch Severance. Like, I don't get it. I would have sold the Sabres years ago, but I think Terry Pegula doesn't want to do that.
Well, we'll remember this, he sold over 20% of the team back in December at a valuation of $5 billion, which gives Pegula more than $1 billion in the team, right? So,
but even still, though, is that not up front? Wouldn't that pay for the overage there,
right.
you would think?
With the extra charges, the Bills are now paying $1.3 billion when you do all the math and everything else. So they're looking for a little relief here with the debt limit from the NFL. That's something that will be discussed later this month when the NFL owners get together at their league meetings.
When is the NFL going to say no?
Right. Irresponsible. I mean, the guy's doing everything he can to make sure that his money doesn't go
Well,
into that stadium.
let's explore that for a second. If they say no, then what?
Some of your money goes into that stadium.
Or you sell other things and pay for it that way.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I mean, what was the famous quote from Kim when they were talking about this?
We don't have $1 billion lying around here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
Let's shift gears and head to the Great Northwest, where Corbin Smith is the host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast. I'm smitten. I want DK Metcalf in Bills gear next year. I know a lot of teams, a lot of fan bases want the same thing. What will it actually take? What's going on with the Seattle Seahawks here?
Brent Marchand to Florida.
Oh. Look.
You don't know?
I mean,
that's a name.
It's a name. It's a name. But it's the NHL trade deadline still, right?
Here it comes.
Oh, who cares?
Nobody likes that guy except when he's on your team. I think if you had him on your team, you'd be like, yeah, I like that guy. But nobody likes that guy. That guy's a pest. To Florida, eh? Okay.
Yeah.
Florida going to try and make a little bit of a run here again. Corbin Smith, Locked On Seahawks. Next on The Fan.
Bills making a move today as they sign one of their own. Linebacker Terrell Bernard agreeing on a 4-year contract extension. Bernard in Buffalo through 2029. Hamrick's at Laval tonight. Head coach Mike Leone knows this is going to be a hostile environment.
You know, if you look at our away record this year, we've played in a lot of tough buildings. We've been really good in Laval, and it's just you got to have poise and composure in those situations to stay disciplined and especially stay out of the box and just stick together. And our guys have done a great job of that, of just playing and, you know, one shift at a time mentality.
Andrew Mossbergs will have the call tonight beginning at 7 o'clock. NHL trade deadline is here. Well, it's come and gone now. Dylan Cousins gets dealt from Buffalo to Ottawa, along with defenseman Dennis Gilbert. Buffalo getting center Josh Norris in return. Gene Battaglin, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Top Shelf Sports Talk. You're hanging out in the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia on the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Harold Landry, though, is a guy he's a good player. He's a really good player. He's 6'2", 250-pound guy, so he's on the undersized thing. He's a little bit like an outside linebacker, like a Von Miller kind of guy.
Outside linebacker.
But he has been productive, and he's going to be available as well. He's been to 1 Pro Bowl in his career. So there you have it. He's a guy that's played at a high level. His best year was a 12-sack season in 2021. Then he blew his ACL. Then the year after coming back in 2023, he had 10.5 and 9 last year. So he's been productive. Whether he fits in or how he fits in, what his skill set is, I don't watch film on him. I don't know, but the Bills will have a file on him, and they'll have an opinion. But once again, we don't know what that opinion is.
And get this, he was teammates with Matt Milano.
There's Steve Tasker, Matty Glab earlier today at One Bills Live talking about Harold Landry. We want to talk about some of these other options for the Buffalo Bills, whether you're talking about via trade or free agency when the league year gets underway next week. We're going to get Corbin Smith, Locked On Seahawks, on with us so we can discuss what it might take to pull DK Metcalf away from the Seattle Seahawks. And we were hearing, One Bills Live yesterday say as much as maybe $30 million a year for the Seattle wide receiver on a new deal after you make that initial trade, which could result in a first and a third round pick going Seattle's way if Seattle has it their way. And if that's exactly what it's going to take, a first and a third, just to pry him away from Seattle, I would say nah. I as much as I love the player, I would say nah.
Is there a team willing to do that, though? That's what Seattle's asking for right now. And they're saying multiple teams have inquired, which I don't doubt that. And Seattle seems to be a team that is kind of in rebuild mode. What is it? Why wouldn't you give that guy the money? Is it because he likes candy, as I've been reading? Honestly, that should be a guy that is your team, somebody that you want to build around, somebody that, I don't know what the Seahawk Wall of Fame version is, but somebody that you want to honor someday.
Yeah, I guess I view him. I don't quite view him as where Diggs was when the Vikings traded Diggs to the Bills, and the Bills gave up a first-round pick for Diggs. Remember? Mm-hmm. I think Diggs still had a lot more game left, more game than what we have out of Metcalf at this stage of his career. That's just my hunch based on what we've seen out of Metcalf. But I imagine if you have a quarterback like Josh Allen throwing to DK Metcalf, any production concerns you might have had with him in Seattle kind of go bye-bye, because that's a guy that can do specific things in this Bills offense that they don't have right now. And quite honestly, for as much as we loved having Diggs here and the production that we saw with Diggs and Allen, Metcalf is a different kind of cat. He's just a different breed of cat with his size and his speed on the outside. I'm just very fascinated by what team, if any team, gets DK Metcalf when it's all said and done.
Yeah, and then the other angle here, too, is Geno Smith. Are they really – haven't we always kind of viewed him as the placeholder? There was talk last year, my gosh, could they actually drop Bo Nix? Could they be a team that Seattle was kind of all right, they're kind of within range, and they didn't do that. But Geno Smith isn't the guy who's going to deliver you a promise. He just seems to be a competent guy who is on the back end of his career. So for Seattle, what would be the plan if they don't go with Geno Smith?
That's a great question. And hearing that he might be dealt is, again, we're in the season of lying, and we will remain in the season of lying all the way through the end of April with the NFL draft. But You make that move now, you kind of leave yourself exposed. Everybody's going to know that team needs a quarterback. Who's it going to be? Is it going to be somebody in the draft, or are you going to pluck one of these free agents? Does Sam Darnold to Seattle make sense if you make that move? I think it does. Is Sam Darnold even going to consider that, or will he already have an offer from a Tennessee or a Minnesota or Las Vegas? Lots to unpack from the Seahawks and the moves that they could be potentially making here. The other move that was made by Seattle this week that we might see a reversal on here is them releasing their other wide receiver, Tyler Lockett. Now reports are that they might try to bring Lockett back, and maybe that's just a matter of Lockett coming back on a more team-friendly deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it doesn't seem like a team that be ready to compete, but if we get Corbin Smith lined up, we'll bring him on here. Danger, not able to reach him now, and apologize for that.
Okay. Let's do this. Let's take a quick break. We'll regroup. We'll come back with some takes. We have Greg Thompson, Cover 1, stopping by the sports bar as well. Is that Corbin joining us? I think we have Corbin actually on the blower now. And if we do, we will double check here. Gino, give me a thumbs up. We got a thumbs up. All right. So we won't take a break here. Let's continue and have our conversation with the host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast. That would be the great Corbin Smith. Good with his time.
Blaming technology on this.
And joining us here in the sports bar. Corbin, good to have you on with us, man. How you been?
I'm good. Sorry about the late arrival. I was trying to hit accept, and it felt like when that trade with Doomerville back in the day on the fax machine wasn't working.
That's great.
Well, Corbin, we kind of laid out the questions we want to ask you here, but just first and foremost, thanks for joining us here today. Corbin Smith, Locked On Seahawks podcast. Talked to you before the Bills game last season, and now the Seahawks giving permission here, or shopping around, I should say, DK Metcalf. What led into all this from the outside? Like, why would you let a player of that caliber kind of explore options and not lock him up long term, Corbin?
Well, there's a couple things that are factoring into this. First and foremost, the week before the Combine, there were some preliminary discussions because Metcalf is entering the last year of his contract, and there was a gap between what the Seahawks felt they wanted to pay and what DK Metcalf was wanting. So money, of course, is something that is at the forefront of this. Metcalf is looking for that $30+ million deal. And the Seahawks don't necessarily know if they want to pay that price because as good as he is, we're not sure if he's a top 5 caliber receiver, which that type of a payday would suggest. And then last week on Friday, caught wind of this from multiple credible sources that there had been a couple of teams that had been hovering around, that had been talking to John Schneider, the Packers being the most notable one, the Patriots as well, that were inquiring about availability. And at least in the case of the Packers, that conversation got beyond the is he available? No, he's not, and then hang up phase. And they were actually putting together a deal. They had a player, a receiver, as well as a high pick that they were looking at. They thought we may potentially be able to get DK Metcalf with this deal. Of course, that didn't happen, but now you fast forward to this week, and then you have the new drama on Wednesday morning where DK Metcalf, after meeting with the team the day before, says, you know what, if you guys are exploring some of these things, then, I'm just going to make it easier for you. How about you trade me right now? And so it's kind of just been one of those things where it's been gradually building up to this point, and now you got a bunch of other teams. Now that DK has publicly made it known, I'm available, and the Seahawks have made it known he's available. Now you got a lot more teams that are getting interested in seeing what it's going to take to acquire him. So it's just one of those cases, money talks, but also just sometimes, you have to figure out how you're going to allocate your money. And I think the Seahawks might be considering reallocating how they're spending their money after, for a long time, being among the top teams in spending at wide receiver.
So we know, Corbin, that what we've heard at least is that we might take a first and a third-round pick just to pry DK Metcalf away from Seattle, and that's before you talk about the extension that you were discussing where Metcalf wants to make somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 million a year. I guess my question is, based on what you've seen out of him and projecting what he could be down the stretch here of his career, is he worth that much? I know that this is a negotiation, and the truth probably lies somewhere in between, but can DK Metcalf really get $30 million a year?
I think there are teams that would be willing to go that far. I don't know that the Seahawks are the team that are willing to do that. And that's telling because I think, a lot of times you say this about players, he's more valuable to Seattle than he is to other teams. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. The draft compensation is actually the sticky point here because the reports about a first and a third, I had not heard anything on that line late last week. They were hoping to get a first-round pick, but I didn't hear about a third-rounder getting chucked in with that. I think they're going to have a tough time getting a first-round pick, in all honesty. The market is just not what it was 2 years ago. I mean, Davante Adams went for a first and a second to the Raiders, but we saw how that panned out for the Raiders, and I think a lot of teams are now looking at this as a situation where are we going to win a championship with a receiver that's making that kind of money? It really hurts the way that you can construct the rest of the roster, and there's been such a saturation of good young receivers that have come into the league recently that I think that there's a change of the guard now in what teams are willing to pay, unless you're like a Justin Jefferson type that is clearly worth that kind of money. It just feels like the market has changed a lot the last couple of years. So I'd be shocked if they can get that kind of compensation. A second rounder, I think, is definitely doable, but a first, that's going to be tricky sledding, I think, for John Schneider.
Yeah, if Davante Adams is on the market and you might have Cooper, like you mentioned, like there's going to be some names if you want to just do some comparative shopping. Are we going to get to a point where this becomes like the running back market, knowing that, hey, these receivers that come into the league, they're more ready to go? Sometimes they take time to develop, certainly, but you can get cheaper at that position. Do you think that that's also part of this too?
Yeah, I think that it is trending towards that direction. And it's interesting because I've been covering the NFL now for almost 10 years. And when first 4 or 5 years I was covering the league, it felt like receivers were one of the positions that it took a couple of years to really get guys going. But now that is changing with the way that college offenses are structured and the proliferation of 7-on-7. You're having way more pro-ready guys coming into the NFL at the receiver position, and there's just so many of them. And it makes it easier. I mean, you just look at Kansas City. They got rid of Tyreek Hill, and then they made 3 straight Super Bowls.
Right.
And there's other examples of teams that have gotten rid of big-name receivers, and they turn around and they're still very competitive. And I even look at the Seahawks. When they won the Super Bowl, their top 2 receivers were Doug Baldwin and Jermaine Kearse, who were still on their undrafted rookie contracts at that time. It doesn't feel like it's a position that paying guys $30+ million is going to create an opportunity for you to win championships. There's no proof of that. So it's interesting. I think that you are seeing a change in dynamics. I don't know that it's ever going to be viewed as, and I mean, running back's kind of on the way back up right now, but I don't know if it's ever going to sink to that point. But I do think teams now are having reservations about giving up a lot of draft capital and then forking over a bunch of money into one receiver.
Corbin, we talk about the guy that got you to that Super Bowl and got you the Super Bowl win, Pete Carroll, who's in Vegas now and seems to be stirring it up here in the offseason because we're hearing rumors that, we're hearing one rumor that he might reunite with Russell Wilson and run it back. Hey, we were both fired from Seattle. Let's see what we could do here in Vegas. And we hear another rumor more recently that Geno Smith might be somebody that Carroll is trying to pull away from Seattle. And I just wonder to myself, all right, what is Seattle's plan at quarterback here? What can you tell us about what you're hearing about the former Seahawks head coach now in Vegas?
Yeah, to be honest with you guys, I haven't heard anything on that front as far as the Seahawks even entertaining the idea of moving Geno Smith. I would not be shocked at all if the Raiders have called or if Pete Carroll asked him about that when he and John Schneider were on the airplane together flying to the Combine. I don't know if you guys heard about that story, but Pete Carroll apparently was up in the middle of the aisle in first class because he was in coach, but John Schneider, and I guess they talked for an hour up there. But, who knows what was going on in that discussion. But I would be stunned if the Seahawks are moving on from Geno Smith at this point. I mean, who are they going to bring in to replace him? That has been the big question here. So really the extension's been what I've heard a lot of talk about, and the amount of cap space they can open up so they can go out and they can make some moves in free agency, re-sign some of their own players. I would still be very surprised if anything's going on that front. I'd not be surprised if Pete Carroll's trying to pry him away because he loves Geno Smith, but I think that the Seahawks are in a position where he's more valuable to them than whatever the Raiders could offer them in draft compensation.
We're talking to Corbin Smith. He is the host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, which you can hear inside the Odyssey app and wherever you get your pods. Corbin, as far as a guy that we certainly associated with Seahawk football for so many years, and now he's going to be on the market here. Your thoughts on the career path of Russell Wilson? I mean, he's in Seattle, back-to-back Super Bowls, franchise quarterback. Looks like, hey, this guy's destined for the Hall of Fame. Unless he has some sort of act here late in his career, hard for me to imagine, seeing that he's never even gotten one MVP vote. But just your thoughts here. Are you surprised that Russell Wilson has become this quarterback that seems like a consolation prize to whoever's trying to search for a quarterback this offseason?
Well, at this point, I'm not surprised because it's been really 4 years since we've seen Russell Wilson play as a top 10 quarterback. His last year in Seattle, he didn't play at that level. And that's one of the reasons the Seahawks were willing to move on from him and decided to go with Geno Smith. They felt he was declining at that stage, and the Broncos gave him that monster offer. They're like, we're taking this. And I think some of the issues you got to give Pete Carroll a lot of credit because Pete Carroll was a master at mitigating the clear deficiencies that Russell Wilson had in his game, not being able to consistently play in structure and the height. Like, I don't care what anybody says. That is an issue for a quarterback. If you're 5'10", there are things you cannot do. And late in his time in Seattle, you started to see some of those things. They became a bigger problem, particularly not being able to attack the middle of the field consistently, not being able to play in structure. And then in Denver, that was a huge problem because the offense that they were running, they were trying to have more structure, and he just couldn't do it. So you take away some of the athleticism late in his career that really made him a threat early in his career. It just feels like at this point he's a guy who he can win some games for you, but he's past the point now where you can look at him as a top 20 starting quarterback in the NFL, and there were some signs of that late in his time in Seattle.
Corbin, talk about the first year of Coach McDonald there in Seattle and put your evaluation on where the team is and where they're heading to this offseason. And then let's talk a little bit about what they might need to address here come the end of April in the NFL draft.
I thought Mike McDonald really did a good job for his first year, and there were certainly some growing pains along the way. In particular, some of the free agent additions that he and John Schneider worked together to get. They moved on from both the linebackers that they signed by week 10 and had two new starters in there. And, you got to give Mike McDonald credit there because he was willing to make those moves as a first-year coach, and the locker room backed him because they worked out. They got to double-digit wins, even though they didn't make the playoffs. They finished with 5 wins in their last 8 games. There's a lot to be positive about, and I think that's really what fans are having a hard time with right now with the DK Metcalf stuff is this seems like this is a team that's an ascending team, and Mike McDonald and John Schneider have said that multiple times. We think we're just getting started, and that this was a precursor to us being able to contend in the NFC again. And now one of your best players is saying, I don't want to be here. And so that's kind of been a little bit of it's put a blowtorch on things. And I think that that's a little bit surprising considering that this team did seem to be trending in the right direction. I think in a lot of ways they still are. They've got the pieces in place on defense to be a top 10 defense next year. They've got some really fun young players on both sides of the ball. But now you've got that big issue with we're potentially replacing 2 of the best receivers in franchise history in the same offseason, or trying to. Our offensive line is still a major issue, and we have long-term quarterback questions. So it feels like they're in the right spot in most regards, but some of the stuff that's come out here has kind of dampened the mood a little bit for Seahawks fans.
Yeah, Seattle, the only team with double-digit wins not to make the postseason last year. Corbin Smith, our guest here, he is the host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast. Corbin, you mentioned the Seahawk offensive line. Now, here in West New York with the Buffalo Bills, if I had to say top 3 needs for the Buffalo Bills when it comes to the draft, first and foremost, it's the defensive line. I would say corner. And then also wide receiver, knowing that, okay, the caveat here being you could address some of these things certainly in the free agency period coming up. But entering the draft with Seattle picking at number 18, what are the top 3 needs, would you say, for the Seahawks?
Well, right now, offensive line takes 1A, 1B, 1C, however you want to put it. They've got to address the interior offensive line in particular. They've just been playing musical chairs for what feels like a decade at the center and guard positions. So they've got to get that figured out. That's going to be near the front of their needs as far as pick number 18 goes. If DK Metcalf's gone, wide receiver goes to number 2. They've got to find somebody to be a running mate with Jackson Smith and Jigba. I wouldn't be shocked if they picked a receiver in the first round with that 18th pick or with a trade down. And then I think when you're looking at other potential needs for this team, on defense, maybe they look for another edge rusher. Boye Mafe is going to be a free agent after this year. Tinnuosu's had injuries the last couple of years. They just released Draymond Jones, and this is a deep edge rushing class. So I would not be shocked at all if they go that route in the first round. They'd go get another quarterback hunter that can go after Brock Purdy and company in the NFC West. Those, to me, would be the 3 biggest needs going into the draft for this team.
Talk about wide receiver a little bit more here, because Tyler Lockett gets released by the team. We're getting reports that he's going to be released at the start of the league year. Do you think he comes back to Seattle on a deal that might be more team-friendly?
Yeah, he was actually already released. He was on the league wire on Wednesday.
Yeah. That's right.
So he's been cut. I think he ends up in Las Vegas with Pete Carroll, I think is what happens. I think he gets back with his longtime coach in Seattle, and they need receiving help there in Vegas. So I think that's what happens. Nobody was surprised by this. This was one of those moves that, as great as Tyler Lockett has been, he had a $30 million cap hit this upcoming season. He's coming off the worst productive season, or worst season productivity-wise he'd had since 2017. He's going to be 33. He is still a good player, but he's just not the level of player that he was for most of his career in Seattle. They had no choice at that point when they weren't able to get a pay cut orchestrated, that they had to make a move at that point. So they've been preparing for that. They just weren't prepared for the fact, well, we also might not have DK Metcalf. So that's what's really thrown a wrench into everything. And now Jake Bobo is your number 2 receiver currently on the roster if you don't have DK Metcalf. And as much as I like Bobo, I think his ceiling's probably receiver 3. So he's your number 2 guy. You clearly need to go out and find somebody in free agency and or the draft to try to supplement that group.
Yeah, Corbin, last one for me, and I just wanted to get your thoughts here. Going back, last time we talked to you was leading up to the Bills-Seahawks game in October, and it's not surprising the Bills won that game. I mean, the Bills it's kind of a field goal away from the Super Bowl. What I was surprised with was, hey, how much Bills Mafia was actually in attendance out there in Seattle for a home field advantage. Was that just kind of a one-week thing? And granted, we're familiar with this here in Western Europe because Sabre fans dump their ticket to Toronto fans all the time. But your thoughts on what happened that day? Was it just kind of a one-week thing, or is that actually kind of a concern that the Seahawk fans are not living up to the reputation of the 12, so to speak?
Unfortunately, it was not a one-off this year. I mean, Green Bay and Minnesota also basically dominated, at least on the visiting sideline. They bought a ton of tickets, and so that was something that was brought up multiple times. And, you talk to people around the organization, and they'll tell you, there's really nothing we can do about this. They can't force people to hold on to their tickets or anything. So at the end of the day, this team was 3-6, I believe, at home. They had, this unheard of lack of success at Lumen Field. You want to fix that problem, you got to win games at home. And so it's a self-inflicted issue more than anything. And you also got to give credit to some of the fan bases out there for traveling really well. But if you don't want those tickets being sold, win football games. That's how you do it.
Corbin Smith hosts the Locked On Seahawks podcast, joining us in the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia here on The Fan. Corbin, what's the show schedule like right now? What are you working on here during the offseason with the start of the league year next week?
Well, we're all free agency right now. Just wrapped up an episode a little bit ago looking at some potential free agent targets that the Seahawks could try to get next week, including offensive linemen. I know Seahawks fans are like, please, John Schneider, actually spend more than $5 on the offensive line. But we'll see if that actually happens this time around. They'll have more money to work with, especially if DK Metcalf gets traded. But we'll see if they actually put that money back into the issue that's been the biggest reason they haven't made the playoffs the last 2 years, that offensive line. So that's basically like everyone else, breaking down free agency and getting ready for what should be a lot of chaos next week.
For what it's worth, Corbin, our take here is yes, the Bills would be interested, but not at a first and a third. Maybe it's one of the two. Bills have 2 second-round picks. That wouldn't get it done, right? If just a second.
No, I think if they only offered a second, that would not be enough. If they had a player that they could include, maybe John Schneider would consider it. But no, he's in a situation he does not have to make this trade just to appease DK Metcalf like 5 minutes from now. He doesn't have to settle. So it might not be something that happens here right before free agency. We'll see. But I don't think he's just going to immediately just take whatever offer's thrown at him and let's just get rid of him. I'm sure there's still some talk. How can we get him wanting to stay here too? So it's kind of an interesting situation in the Pacific Northwest.
Corbin, great catching up with you, man. Thanks for making time for us here in the Sports Bar. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Corbin.
There's Corbin Smith. Hear him on the Locked On Seahawks podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, including the free-to-download Odyssey app.
Just like we came to that conclusion, boy. I don't think Myles Garrett's getting moved. DK Metcalf to Buffalo does.
I love it, but not for a first and a third. And by the way, I don't think a first and a third is what's going to get it done. I think if they do want to move on from him, a second and maybe a second and a player or a second and something else could get it done. And I think there are also teams that are much more cap friendly right now to be able to make DK Metcalf the kind of offer or get closer to the kind of offer that he's looking for.
And just as a friendly reminder, the Bills actually don't have a third-round pick this year. They went to Cleveland in the Amari Cooper deal.
Just don't want to see DK Metcalf in New England. Don't want to see DK Metcalf twice a year. Do not. Sorry.
No.
Not looking forward to that. If that's indeed what happens, not looking forward to that.
You know where I'd love to see him? Washington. Now you be talking. I know. You got Deebo Samuel. I'm like, okay, that's a nice piece. But if you had that trio,
Deebo, DK, and McLaurin, yikes! Again, what an advantage to have your quarterback on his rookie deal if he's playing at that high a level as Jaden Daniels did last year. Amazing stuff. Last night, Chuck went hard. I mean, he's our take of the year defending champion.
Is this take of the year worthy?
I don't know that it's take of the year worthy. He goes hard.
It's a take, though.
It is a strong, strong take, and it's within the world of NBA media too. It's Chuck not holding back. He's eliciting some pretty hearty laughter from Shaq and the crew.
But what's funny is I'm listening to Maggie this morning, and she says Chuck is wrong on this.
Ooh.
Which, okay, we'll listen to this together. I will tell you my thoughts on this, and you know what we're talking about. Charles Barkley went off on ESPN and specifically Kendrick Perkins. And you know what? I love it.
His future employer.
Yeah.
Good stuff. We'll get to that, and we'll get to our buddy Greg Thompson from Cover One. We'll talk about the Bills and their salary cap as we get ready for the start of the new league year next week, and legal tampering on Monday. That's all coming up along with your calls at 866-4FAN, 866-4326.
And streaming online and in the Odyssey app at The Fan Rochester. The sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan Rochester, an Odyssey sports station. The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
No, the Amerks didn't get away scot-free at the NHL trade deadline. Nicolas Aube-Kubel going from the Buffalo organization over to the Rangers for Eric Brandstrom. And the Sabres also dealing Dylan Cousins from Buffalo to Ottawa, along with defenseman Dennis Gilbert in the second-round pick. Buffalo getting center Josh Norris and defenseman Jacob Bernard-Decker. The Amerks in Laval tonight. Andrew Mossbrooks will have your call beginning at 7. Steve Tasker today on One Bills Live about Terrell Bernard getting an extension.
Rousseau, you can give him that money now and save all that money on the cap. And presto changeo, now you go from being $8.5 million over the cap, and just with doing Rousseau, you could be $6 million under with one. And then, you go down the list. Knox, Milano, Dawkins, Ed, Vaughn, and Josh. Vaughn will get you under the cap himself if you just released him.
Bernard getting a 4-year extension worth $50 million. Gene Battaglia in the sports leader, The Fan Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
The Buffalo Bills have reached an extension with Terrell Bernard.
We have a trade to announce.
I didn't realize that Reed was such a powerful figure in the music DJ space.
Mike Danger.
I know it might be a little bit radical. It's time for more violence in sports.
What?
A little bit of violence in our sports today can go a long way. That's what I want. Is that so bad? Am I asking for too much? Do we not remember these moments? Isn't that not why we love sports? Because we have these memories of guys getting their face kicked in? But we'll remember that moment. We need more of it.
Gene Battaglia.
I've never in my life gone into the month of March still with the Christmas lights up.
Whoa!
Not my fault. Not my fault, dude.
Whoa!
Not my fault. That's the last thing that hasn't been canceled, by the way. You called me white trash.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan. Rochester.
No lies told. Did you get the lights down yet?
Do my responsibility here at Odyssey
Every
Rochester
day
is
that
to
passes.
sell
Every day that
advertising.
passes.
Tomorrow, if we don't have any precipitation,
I'm hearing a lot of excuses, and your neighbors aren't going to like this too much. All right, they're all calling me at 866-4326, telling me how discouraging it is to live next door to white trash. All right, so let's get those lights down, Gino. No excuses.
I want to congratulate, by the way, this was reported by the DNC, one of our proud sponsors, Rick's Tally Ho. We get the Tally Ho out in Henrietta getting their expansion done. I think we got to write some new commercials here. So anybody that wants to.
Hey, everybody, coming down to Rick's Tally Ho, where we got the new expansion out there. And is that do I see Gene Battaglia in the VIP room? It's Gene Battaglia and his fantasy baseball buddies. Say hi to Cinnamon on stage 4. Cinnamon, stage 4.
Congratulations, Ignacio. Appreciate you guys.
Absolutely.
And yes, I will get down the Christmas lights this week.
All right, very good.
Yeah.
To kind of go off of what the Dan DeLorean pulled from yesterday's show, I had to take yesterday. I was talking about, I think we're ready for just a little bit more violence in sports. And that all comes off the heels of the Four Nations tournament and the USA and Canada and the 3 fights in the first 9 seconds. And I know you heard something and saw something yesterday. And while it might not be on the field of play or on the court or what, the contrast, the attack mentality, this is what we love. We love the debate. We love guys going after other guys.
Yeah, or we've gotten to a point where, like, hey, if you're a competitor, we have to be nice. We have to be. No, that's competitor.
Right.
And Charles Barkley is part of the TNT show. And the weird part about this is, as you know, TNT, Turner, they lost the contract. And Turner's still going to produce that show. They're just going to lease it to ESPN. So it still will feel like same studio, same cast, same everything, except you're going to see it on ESPN next year. But this is real, right? The point is that for the NBA, for the better part of the season, it's been kind of a down year for various reasons. Load management. There's not a lot of storylines.
Ratings are down.
Yeah.
The game isn't as fun to watch. And this kind of goes to my point a little bit. I mean, Chuck's going to say something different, but, I get bored watching guys launching threes all game long. I get bored watching guys not playing defense. I get bored when it's not physical.
He's not talking about any of that.
Correct.
Here. Let's listen to Charles Barkley, the master takesman, Charles Barkley.
I saw a fool idiot on TV talking about the Lakers save the NBA.
Save the NBA?
Yeah. He's an idiot and a fool, but he know who he is. What's his name, Shaq?
Which one you talking about?
Kendrick Perkins.
Oh.
He said the Lakers, first of all, the Lakers have had a great 2 weeks. He said the Lakers saved the NBA season. That's because them fools on the other network, which we're going to be working for next year, that's all they talk about. Let me tell y'all something.
Tell me something.
And first of all, I want all the smoke. I don't whistle when I walk by the graveyard or anything like that.
I don't whistle when I walk by the graveyard.
Right.
I like that.
Hey, man,
I'm stealing that one.
The Lakers are doing great. Got a long way to go. But the reason the season's been going great for the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Y'all just want to talk about the Warriors and the Lakers. They're both doing great. Don't get me wrong. If I turn out to be wrong, I got no problem with that. But y'all are idiots because y'all talk about the Lakers and the Warriors all the time. Y'all don't. The Cleveland Cavaliers have won 12 straight games. The Oklahoma City got the MVP, and they are on fire. Y'all are talking about who's in second place. That's the reason I get pissed. Hey, the Lakers are doing great. I don't mind being wrong. The Warriors are doing great. But that's because you fools on other networks, which we're going to become fools next year. We'll be working on that network. But Oklahoma City and the Cavs been balling for 6 months. Y'all talking about teams that had two great weeks.
Time out. I get what you're saying. You just went at the whole network.
They talk about the same
whole
stuff.
industry.
Whole industry. They talk about the same stuff every single day.
I would have to, but you know, there's
is there some credit? Is there some credit to be handed out here?
Yes. But don't say basketball's only watching now. First of all, between that and this lame-ass LeBron-Michael Jordan debate, which is lame. I've said for years. The only people talk about LeBron and Michael is people on television who got no talent to talk about anything else. I've been saying that for years. I ain't hanging on to the 90s. I've always said LeBron's great, Michael's great. But y'all talk about it all the time and then got LeBron out there posing, talking about he all mad about being the face of the league. But it makes me mad. The Oklahoma City and the Cleveland Cavaliers are the two best stories in the NBA this year. Congratulations to the Lakers and the Warriors. They've had 2 good weeks. The Cavs and OKC have had 6 great months.
Okay. Tell us how you really feel. All right. Yeah, Shaq. Tell us how you feel.
Man. All right. Is this one of your favorite rants of all time?
Yes, it is. Thank you. I needed it on my birthday.
All right. That is Charles Barkley on TNT last night. Danger, there is so much there. I'm gonna push the LeBron Jordan thing aside because he's absolutely right on there. I wouldn't call somebody no talent if they went to that card. But
I would like to note that we've never once gone to that well here in the sports bar.
No.
We've never once said, all right, let's go to the phones at 866-4326. Who you got, LeBron or MJ? Tell us who's the best ever.
Somebody here in the building, Frank's like, hey, you guys going to talk about, Pete Rose perhaps going to the Hall of Fame? No. Like, tell me you don't listen to the sports bar by asking a question like that. No, we're not going to talk about Pete Rose. We're not going to talk about LeBron and Jordan.
Who's on your Mount Rushmore of NBA? Get out of here.
Look, Barkley is right in the sense that there are good storylines that are not being talked about. But you know why they're not being talked about? Because that network does their research. And it's the same reason when we get to the summer, you will see Cowboys, Aaron Rodgers, whatever it be. And for teams that are actually good, like Buffalo, you're not going to get as much coverage. So welcome to what we've been talking about a long time here, Chuck. And he should know this. That was Maggie's take. He works in this business.
Yeah.
I do find it funny he called Kendrick Perkins an idiot and a fool.
Well, I almost feel like Chuck is like basically challenging ESPN. Like, I really don't want to go work there. I'd be happy if I didn't have to do this. So let me just let you all know you're dumb. You're a bunch of idiots because you're not talking about the real story. And we get it. Like, you're right. The ESPN probably spends a lot of money researching what teams and what players sports fans want to hear more about. The Cowboys get eyeballs. The Lakers get eyeballs.
But that's the part of this, too, is Perkins is right. If he had just altered the take here. The take being it should have been the Luka trade saved the NBA season. That was something. It was a bad NBA season, and then all of a sudden the story, like, whoa.
It's the biggest story of the NBA.
It is the biggest story for a week. It was the biggest story. It stole the spotlight away from the NFL. Why? And then you explore all the angles of that. And then you look ahead like, wait a second, the Lakers are they actually good now? Well, they're winning, and are they going to go far? I don't know. I'm not an NBA expert, but you know what? You can't just say it's not worthy of discussion.
I do think, though, he's right. Like, we should be talking about what the Cavs are doing because they're having one hell of a season. We should be talking about SGA and OKC, except it's Oklahoma City and it's Cleveland, and there's nothing sexy about talking about those two teams.
So what will happen then? Chuck will be proven wrong, and Kendrick Perkins will take a victory lap because guess who's going to be in the NBA Finals, Danger?
Oh, I'm not saying the Lakers are in the finals.
No, I'm saying OKC.
Oh, yeah.
OKC and Cleveland, and guess what's going to happen to those numbers?
Yeah.
You and I will watch. Sports fans will watch. Like anybody. Like, who are these teams in small markets? I don't care.
I think it's interesting, though. I think for as good of a regular season as both of those teams are having, I don't know that I have either of them making it all the way to the finals. I really don't. I think a lot can happen in the postseason. And for as good as they've been, and Chuck's right, I mean, Cleveland and OKC, they've had a great 6 months of basketball as opposed to the great 2 weeks that the Lakers and the Warriors have had. You know, there's still a lot of wild cards out there in the West and in the East.
There's nothing wrong also with Charles Barkley venting about where we're at. I mean, it was 2 years ago, we're talking about Brooklyn. They haven't even gotten to a final. What do we care about? This trio that didn't play together, basically, but it was nonstop. One little this, whatever the drama was in Brooklyn, that seemed to dominate a league where I'd rather talk about other things.
Yeah, and maybe this is the problem with the NBA. We've spent 15 minutes talking about the talking heads who cover the NBA and nothing about the actual play on the court, the teams that are doing what they're doing, the players who are a part of those teams that are doing it. SGA is fantastic.
He's fantastic. Here's the thing about the Lakers. The storyline for the Lakers last night, it's not the Lakers. It's that the Knicks, one of their pieces broke last night. If you missed it last night, overtime, it was on the West Coast. Jalen Brunson rolls his ankle. Who knows how? 39 points, team's leading scorer last night and for the season. And now, all right, I don't know if it's high grade. I don't know what, but he's not going to be available. And for a team that is based on the East Coast, Danger, based in the number one media market, it's funny. Like, you could say we don't talk enough about the Knicks. We're just talking about the Lakers and the upsetting Chuck. I like the fact, though, it kind of goes along with your line. More rivalries. How about a Chuck Perkins? Right?
Yes.
Perkins should be writing Barkley a thank you note.
Right. You know, if Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless did a pay-per-view where they just debated each other, I would pay. I would watch that. I want that. I want rivalries.
No. I don't want Skip Bayless. I want Chuck and Stephen A. Like that's the one. Like, it's easy to pick on Kendrick Perkins. Go after Stephen A. Stephen A got a new contract.
He did get a new contract. I imagine he's probably still the highest paid employee at ESPN. And we say it all the time in the sports bar, takes equal currency. Chuck is about to make some money because he's got takes. That's our defending Take of the Year champion from 2024, Charles Barkley, just eviscerating ESPN.
I never heard of Jenny Barnazik before today. She's the head coach of Oklahoma. And she could be like a star here in the making here, just watching her go crazy. We have the monitor on the women's basketball tournament on the SEC.
Yeah. and Oklahoma advancing over Kentucky. I had to turn off my distraction. It was 5-2 in the second. My boys, they got it close. They kept it close. I want to say it was 1-1, 3-1, 3-2, and then a couple of goals from Hibbing and Chisholm have them leading the East Grand Forks Green Wave, my alma mater, my high school in Minnesota.
Do they still have the guy on YouTube doing the analysis of the hair?
Damn well better be. I'm ready for it on Sunday. Tournament wraps on Saturday.
Okay, so he only does it for the final then, where he's breaking down all the
no, they'll introduce the whole team for every team's first game that's televised. So what the guy will do, and it's all for a good cause, he will evaluate all of the footage and rate and give a top 10 the all hockey hair team from the Minnesota State High School hockey tournament. And that usually drops on Sunday. The tournament ends on Saturday, so I guarantee you he's in the lab right now looking over game film and ready to announce the top 10 with a creative flair and a good cause behind him. I can't wait for that. It's one of my favorite videos of the year. Can't miss it. We've got Greg Thompson at Cover One joining us next. Hey, we learned a little bit more through the course of this week of what it might take to get a guy like DK Metcalf in Buffalo. I want to talk to Greg about the Bills' cap situation. I want to talk to him a little bit about this Terrell Bernard deal. I don't know what everybody's feeling is of it, or everybody's just reserved to the fact, hey, that's good. They extended him. He's their defensive captain. We like Terrell Bernard. Did the Bills pay too much for Terrell Bernard?
I can't answer that until you see the breakout. Though.
Right. I'm not sure. I know $25.2 million in guaranteed money, and we'll talk to Greg a little bit about this as well. Greg Thompson, Cover One. He's like our capologist. We'll get him on next year, along with your calls at 866-4FAN, 585-866-4326.
The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Buffalo Bills taking care of one of their own today. Linebacker Terrell Bernard and the team agreeing on a 4-year extension. He'll be in Buffalo through the year 2029, reportedly $50 million tacked on. We'll talk to Greg Thompson from Cover One. He joins us next year in the Sports Bar. Amerks tonight in Laval. Head coach Mike Leone knows it's going to be a hostile environment tonight.
You know, if you look at our away record this year, we've played in a lot of tough buildings. We've been really good in Laval, and it's just you got to have poise and composure in those situations to stay disciplined and especially stay out of the box and just stick together. And our guys have done a great job of that, of just playing and, you know, one shift at a time mentality.
Andrew Mossbergs with the call beginning at 7. The Amerks losing Nicholas Aube-Kubel, by the way, in a trade to the Rangers. The Sabres sending off Dylan Cousins to Ottawa. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, the Fan Rochester.
The beer is cold and the wings are hot. You're in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Let's talk some Buffalo Bills off-season. Legal tampering gets underway on Monday. Greg Thompson, Cover One, is good with his time to join us here in the Sports Bar. Greg, we know that there's a lot that the Bills can do to get cap compliant, and we want to spend time talking with you about this Bills salary cap. But we want to start with the big news of the day today. It's the 4-year extension for Terrell Bernard, $50 million, $25.2 million in guaranteed money, $12.5 million on average per season. Do you feel like this was right in line for what Bernard was, you know, what his value is? I worry a little bit here that based on his size, that this might have been a little bit of an overspend by the Buffalo Bills.
I don't think that's an unreasonable concern. Obviously, we saw that he played at an all-pro level when healthy and played well below that when injured and playing through injury last year. So I think that the concern on him holding up is a valid concern over the next 5 years because obviously we've seen kind of a one season of each. I will say as far as the dollar amount works, that was literally exactly what I projected. 4 years, $50 million, $12.5 million a year. You look at guys last year like Zaire Franklin, Alzair Shahir, you know, looking at Bobby Wagner and things like that. He played as well or better than those guys, certainly well better than them when healthy. So he got paid a little bit more, or basically the going rate of what their slate inflation would be this year. And you saw Zach Bond got $17 million a year in his deal with the Eagles. So it's kind of hard to complain about Bernard getting 12.5 there. That was the going rate. It was either pay him that or he wasn't going to be retained. And I won't fight anyone who doesn't want to invest money at off-ball linebacker. The Bills obviously value that in their defense. I'm comfortable that when you see a guy play at a elite level and then a subpar level, but it's at ages 24 and 25, I'm going to put that in the basket of health and that just, you know, trust that when healthy, he's going to play at an elite level again.
Yeah, Greg, if we're calling all things equal, I'd rather, if you think this is an overpay, well, I'd rather do it for 1 year old, basically. That's, you know, the draft and develop, certainly that is the route to go. Greg Thompson, Cover One, is our guest. Before we talked about, you know, what may happen on Monday in terms of players that may be coming to Buffalo or players leaving, where are the Bills at right now as far as the cap? We know that Sam Martin was released yesterday. That'll save $1.9 million, but how much more work has to happen before the Bills become cap compliant, Greg?
A fair amount. They're certainly not cap compliant right now, and they need to be by, I will say, a lot of fans think it's Monday. It's actually Wednesday at 4 o'clock that they have to be cap compliant, but that's the actual official start of the new league year, and everyone loves a good, you know, legal tampering now and again. So all the fun stuff that we hear on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday morning will be going on, but you can actually have those things announced before there are corresponding moves. So some of the easy ones, I expect some names like an Ed Oliver, a Spencer Brown, a Deion Dawkins, a Taron Johnson. I expect them to be restructured, a base salary restructure. Those guys can create over $30 million with the 4 of them. That's without touching Josh Allen, which is obviously another one, and without going into the bucket of some of the more, you know, you could technically restructure guys like a Dawson Knox or a Matt Milano or a Tyler Bass. I'm really hoping they don't touch any of those and just leave them as is. So next year they have the option to move on if they want to. And then clearly we haven't done anything beyond Sam Martin. You have a couple other guys no bigger than Von Miller in that bucket. So they have a lot of different levers they can pull to be able to get cap compliant, but they have work to do in order to get there.
Let's take a second on Von Miller. What's your take on what the Bills can or should do with Von Miller here coming up?
So I go by the numbers. I think obviously he's not worth what he's going to be paid now. So I'm going to give a couple different options. By far the lowest percentage likelihood is he just stays and makes what he's set to make this year. That's not going to happen. I think there are a couple different options. Obviously you have the option where you release him now, which creates $8.4 million. It's kind of like last year's Stephon Diggs trade. You kind of take your medicine, you have an ugly dead cap hit, but then next year you're clean and you move on with nothing. So that would be my preference if we're going to release him. I don't like the post June 1st cap hit because, as an example, I don't think anybody likes to look at this year's salary cap and see, oh, there's still $4 million and change associated to Trey White. And he hasn't been on the team for now a season and a half. So those are things that sound great in the moment, but it's credit card spending. It's not real savings. You're just kicking that can down the road. In theory, they can do that and make it $17 million in savings. But when you do a post June 1st cut, you don't get it until June 2nd. So you don't get that to spend on free agents now. That's even after you would need to sign most of your draft picks. Like they wouldn't be able to do the rookie mini camp or any of the stuff at that point. It's not practical to do that. There are some other players where it could come into play, but Von Miller doesn't really make sense. So now does he get cut and you save $8.4 million, and that's an important number, or do you work out another pay cut like we had last year where he takes a reduced salary and goes through? And honestly, I think the team kind of uses that exact number. He's owed $17.1 million in cash this year. So if you subtract 8.4 from 17.1, that gets you down to 8.7. I think you could probably even go a touch lower there. Maybe instead of 8.4, you ask for like 10 million of it back and get him down to 7.1. I think that's the ballpark of where he would be if he was a free agent. I do think he'd sign. I think he'd be one of those mercenary guys like we saw for years and years with Yannick Ngakoue and other players who would wait Jadeveon Clowney, wait until the last minute into camp, sign the deal, but you still get reasonable money. They're always going to pay pass rushers. And whether you like Von Miller or not, he still contributed as a pass rusher and as a third down rotational guy. We just need him to be paid at that level. So I think that's the phone call. You offer him that number and say, hey, we'd rather keep you, give you the money now. You give us the savings we would get by releasing you anyways, and everybody's happy. Come chase into the ring.
Yeah, we're talking to Greg Thompson, Cover One. Another question here about the cap because Josh Allen, at some point, Greg, I remember it was a summer day. It was August. Oh, they got the Josh Allen extension done. That was a little different here. You could certainly do this before. What makes sense to you? Do you do this now before free agency, or do you just take your time here and wait maybe till the summer, maybe till next season? At what point do you sit down with Josh? Because when you do, it's going to cost a lot of money.
Yeah, so the indicator for me was last year when they restructured his deal. They restructured both 2024 and 2025. There's still 2 more years after that on his contract. So I always took that as the indicator of, they'll just do his new record-breaking contract, the highest paid player in NFL history, which he's going to get. That's going to happen at some point. I assumed it would happen in 2026. Obviously, I know some guys reported that it was going to happen this year. I think maybe Dan Graziano or someone like that, right after the MVP announcement, said, wouldn't be surprised if we see a new record-breaking extension. So obviously, if they're hearing something, maybe that's the case. I've always assumed it was going to be 2026. If they were to do it this year, they could save $11 million on the cap by reducing it down and then giving him the big new money. If they do it next year, they can save $30 million against the cap. So again, I'm still going to keep with my original take that it'll be in 2026, but if they do it early, I won't be upset. And honestly, there's probably a small little bonus because if you do it before Patrick Mahomes, then Mahomes will come over top of him as the highest paid in NFL history. If Mahomes does it first, we'll probably have to go over top of that and give Josh the highest paid in NFL history. Not that it'll be a big difference. It'll probably be like $500,000 a year difference, but they're both going to get like $65 million a year. So 6 years, $390 million. Not bad money if you can get it.
Yeah, Greg, what about what James Cook is doing here this offseason, publicly demanding $15 million or asking for that $15 million a year? It's something that we haven't seen Brandon Beane do as the GM of the Buffalo Bills, invest that heavily in the run game, in that running back position, the positional value they place on it just doesn't seem to be that. But when you see what Saquon did this week and what Philadelphia is willing to pay, albeit a better player than James Cook, does that help James Cook at getting closer to that dollar figure with Buffalo? Or is this a situation where we as fans should start to begin the process of divorcing ourselves from James Cook being a Buffalo Bill long term?
So just like you said, the next time Brandon Beane pays a running back will be the first time Brandon Beane pays a running back. I've seen far too much history of draft a guy, have him contribute. The next year you draft his backup as a succession plan. You let them play together. You let the first guy walk. You let the second guy take over. You draft a new succession plan. You let them play together. You let the first guy walk. I don't know how many more Zach Moss to Devin Singletary, Singletary to Cook, Cook to Ray Davis. I don't know how many more times we need to see that to see that there's a very clear line of strategy that goes into how they do that. Over Brandon Beane's tenure, the Buffalo Bills have spent the least money in the NFL on running back of any of the 32 franchises. Now, I will say, if someone's going to test that, it would be the best draft pick that we've had at the running back position during Brandon Beane's tenure. James Cook has been great. He was fantastic last year. I think he'll be fantastic again this year. And then I'll root for him when he gets his paycheck from the Raiders or the Jaguars or the Panthers or whoever pays him.
If I asked you the question, who's from 2024, if there was an underrated Buffalo Bill, who's the most underrated Buffalo Bill? I really like what Ty Johnson did for that offense.
Oh yeah.
He's not walking out the door, is he? Because will that fit here? What kind of market do you think there would be for Ty Johnson?
So a real quick nugget I'll give you to reinforce there. You'll know the answer, but I'll ask the question anyways. Can you name the NFL running back who led the entire league in yards per touch last year?
Ty Johnson.
Ty Johnson, yeah.
Literally number one in the NFL. So when Aaron Quinn and I, my co-host, obviously, if you had told us that we were going to go back and rank all of our pending free agents going into the season at the end of the year, and that our top two picks were going to be Mac Hollins and Ty Johnson, I would have laughed at you, but I mean it pretty sincerely. They're my number one priorities of any depending guys here. I think they're going to very highly likely be back. I think that they're going to be valued at a very respectable number. Neither of them are 100% because there's a chance somebody comes. I think that giving both of them a raise that, hey, we're going to give you 2 years, $6 million, $3 million a year. We'll even guarantee a little bit of the next year. You get a raise, you get to stay with us, you get some security for the next 2 years. I think that's the ballpark that we're going to offer both of them, which is a nice acknowledgement of their contribution and a nice little bump over what they got last year. But if somebody comes along and says, hey, we're going to give you 3 years and $15 million, God bless them. Go get your money.
Greg, we saw the extension from Shakir today. Of course, we get the extension from Bernard. Is Benford next? Is Rousseau next? Who do you think is? I mean, we imagine that they've probably got offers in front of them, and now it's just a matter of ironing out the details. Who's next?
I would rank it in that order. I would say the next for me, actually, I'll be sneaky. My next extension candidate is actually Connor McGovern. I think that he's, if I were to hear one next, is he's a pending free agent as well, just like the rest of these guys. It's just not on a rookie deal. And I think that very similar to some of the off-field topics of, he's the guy who hosts the, the O-line room pizza parties at his house and that Josh Allen loves and is sneakily like the exact same age as Josh Allen and on the same progression line as him. I think Connor McGovern is the sneakiest extension candidate people don't talk about. But under the bubble of all the guys that everyone else does talk about, I would say it's Benford next and the most likely. I would put Rousseau after that and Cook a pretty distant fifth. Again, I laid out my reason for that. And I only put Benford ahead of Rousseau because I do think there's a little bit of the reason a Bernard and a Shakir grab the money a little bit earlier is when you're a later round pick who's, somewhat undersized or not all the stereotypical trait check boxes. Bernard's not a speed burner. there, and has also been a late round pick, so he hasn't banked a ton of cash like a lot of these other guys. Rousseau's getting $13 million this year, no matter what. There's a little bit of incentive to just the bird in the hand kind of idea, getting that money now, especially when we're obviously showing that we're paying market level money, and market level money for Bernard or for Benford means like $20 million a year. He's going to get 4 years, $80 million, 4 years, $85 million. It's going to be big money. Whereas Rousseau, he has cash in hand now. He has off the charts traits. He's super young. Those are the guys who cash in big time in free agency. His agent is going to have the leverage to say, hey, you guys want to offer 20, we want 25 million a year. We want 27.5 million a year. And I could see him betting on himself at cornerback. It's harder to have like a splash season per se without just kind of lucking into interceptions. If a pass rusher kind of stumbles into a 14 sack season, he could ask for 30 million a year. So I think that just the numbers of that edge rusher market make that a tougher deal to come to. And I think that there's a lot of people who would question, is Gregory Rousseau a super high-end, really good edge 2, or is he really a number 1 edge rusher who can, threaten to lead the league in sacks and deserves to get that kind of money? We don't know where Brandon Beane and his team values him in that lofty status.
We're talking to Greg Tomsic, Cover One, as certainly he keeps track and all these numbers and everything. And Greg, this is the fun part. The Bills and every other team, we get to go shopping here. And look, number 1 on the list, but the more I think about this, and maybe you tell me if I'm wrong, as much as I would love, and a lot of Bills fans would love to have Myles Garrett in red, white, and blue, there's just a lot of hurdles, a lot of roadblocks here. First and foremost, the Browns really shopping him? The idea that they clear cap space? I mean, I'm just wondering, so is danger, are they preparing some sort of last-minute offer to him? But if he were available, and we don't doubt that Brandon Beane hasn't picked up the phone and at least asked, what would that look like in terms of a trade, in terms of what that would do for the Bills in their cap situation?
So obviously, everyone that you trade for, you have to have the room to be able to fit them in initially on their contract as is. Then you can reach an extension afterwards and reduce that number, get them the new deal. Any of these guys that are thrown around, whether it was Max Crosby before his extension, now obviously names like Trey Hendrickson are being thrown around, Myles Garrett, all the other DK Metcalf, any of those guys, they're going to want a new deal when they arrive at their next team. That also helps the team because you can reduce the cap hit, spread some of the money out, make it work. I always say, like, obviously people who say the salary cap isn't real, that's an exaggeration. It's very real. However, any team in the NFL can make just about anything work in a 1-year window if they really want to. Last year, the Eagles, almost broke off every rule that ever existed in order to make accommodations for the run they went on, and it worked. It was fantastic and was successful. So the Bills could certainly do that. They could be able to make it work. I will say from the Browns side, even though they did the absolutely insane restructure for Deshaun Watson to create some cap space, they would have to do all kinds of other things in order to allow them to trade Myles Garrett. It's significantly better and almost a difference of unrealistic or legitimately not possible to, well, maybe it's possible before and after June 1st. After June 1st, they legitimately could trade him and make it work and not cripple the rest of the roster. They would be really, really tough to even field the full roster, to fill all the 53 roster spots. And the vast majority of them would have to be undrafted free agents or minimum contract players just to allow them to make that trade before June 1st. So I want it like anything else. If you gave me a full redraft of the entire NFL, I think Myles Garrett's the first non-quarterback being drafted. I think he's the best non-quarterback in the NFL. Of course I would want that. It's not actually realistic until we get to post-June 1st. So if that happens then, that's awesome, because then you're talking about a 2026 draft pick and other pieces there. It's better for the Bills too. But I do think it's not just them taking a hard line in the negotiations. It's because they also know they couldn't realistically do it anyway.
What about the DK deal then? I mean, to hear that Seattle would like a first and a third, and DK is probably going to want an extension around $30 million. I mean, is DK Metcalf a $30 million a year wide receiver at this stage of his career? As much as I love the player, as much as I would love to see him in Buffalo, Greg, I have a hard time with that price tag.
I mean, he's on average been a 65 yards a game guy. That's an 1,100-yard season. He's been between 8 and 12 touchdowns every season. He's going to be 27 for this entire season. He's obviously a freak of nature physically. So someone's going to bet on that upside that they can do that. I'll also say I don't think it's an accident that his 1,300-yard, 15-touchdown season was the only season he played with an elite quarterback, because it was the last time Russell Wilson was any good. Me just saying that, there's a front office that will convince themselves that that's in there and that they can still get that elite level of production. Now, whether it should be the Bills and whether Brandon Beane thinks that, nobody knows. I'll also say there was a pretty reasonable report from Justine Anderson out there that the Seahawks had a third-round pick on the table in exchange for DK Metcalf, and then the next day, all of a sudden, somebody had a report that the Seahawks are asking for a first and third. It's not too hard to connect those dots. That somebody planted a report the next day. I will tell you with 100% certainty, the Seahawks are not getting a first and a third for DK Metcalf. Now, if they get better than a third-round pick, I'm sure, maybe. I do think that if the Bills put the 62nd pick on the table, it would be the best offer they get.
Last one for me, Greg. Pretend like you're Brandon Beane. I'm sure you've had these thoughts here because you want to address needs, right? We know the needs the Buffalo Bills have. You need more on the defensive line. You probably need a corner. I'm assuming that Rasul Douglas. What about the safety position? What about wide receiver? When you're looking at what might be available here coming up, whether that are guys that are true free agents or guys that have just been released here, and more names keep coming through, what would be kind of your wish list here if you're Brandon Beane?
So I think the Bills are in that great spot that we used to complain about with the Patriots during the Brady era, where they always had this like cheat code where the guys who just got grossly overpaid by another team made all their money and then got released and like, well, if I'm going to sign for cheap, I might as well sign and go play with them. And some of them worked out famously, like Randy Moss and Corey Dillon and lots of other guys. Some of them were, laughable, like Chad Johnson and Albert Haynesworth and whatever. There was a mixed bag of results, but they got the opportunities over and over and over again. That's the window I want to shop in. And they're like, hey, Jonathan Allen, you just got over $100 million from Washington, but you still want to contribute and play. How about you come sign cheap for us and chase a ring with Josh Allen? It would have been the case with like a Christian Kirk who just got traded. Yeah. But that's the market that I want to play in is, hey, who are some guys who are still really good, have made their money. They're not, everybody wants to go sign the hot new free agent. Well, those are the guys who, I don't know if you hear some of the people talk. A lot of the times, like the players don't even know which team they're going to sign with. It's literally the agent coming back and saying, hey, the highest number is here. Congratulations, you're a Cardinal. Like that's it. Like, so those deals, when it's your first big contract, those guys do not take these other things into account. Fans talk about, oh, but they want to go to a warm weather team or they want to play for a contender. None of that's real for those guys. For the ones that do, it's the ones who already made their money. And that's, sometimes that's scratch and dent stuff. They're a little bit older. They're not, in the prime of their career, but they still have contributions to make. And I think that's a space we can play in and take advantage of to be able to add some legitimate talent that can still help with this and go that route. I would expect way more of those this year than, I'd love to say, oh my gosh, the Bills signed Javon Holland. I expect him to sign the biggest deal that anybody puts in front of him.
Yeah. Greg, the draft coming up too, and I'm curious as to what garage you park your car in. I mean, there's obviously needs at defensive tackle, at corner we've discussed. Do you have a draft crush yet? Is there a team that you're saying to yourself, all right, I'm team wide receiver, I want the Bills to get that true one on the outside and do it through the draft?
So I had the good fortune of being credentialed at the Combine, getting to watch a lot of these guys do the drills and things in person. We had a team down in the Senior Bowl. There's a lot of other guys who do way more draft work than I do. I focus more on getting ready for the free agency and those different things. But getting to see them in person in Indianapolis, I got to tell you, man, Derek Harmon, the D tackle from Oregon, is a monster. Like, no person who is that big has any right to move that way. And, I think there's some other guys who have, some maybe higher floor. Maybe he's not a guarantee to be a hit, but he looks an awful lot like Chris Jones when he moves around. And just guys that big are normally not that explosive and that smooth, and he's put together really, really well. That's a guy who I think is a slam dunk if he's there on the board at pick 30. I would love to have a guy. A lot of people, I joke a lot about large humans, and I want to have a large guy. I don't want a guy who is just takes 2 steps and stops but can't push the pocket or do anything. I want a disruptive guy who is huge. I want a guy who will keep Milano and Bernard clean but can also get after the passer. I want a guy who will take double teams from Ed Oliver but can also collapse the pocket and create havoc and chaos himself. So the Walter Nolans, the Derek Harmons, the Kenneth Grants, that's where my focus is. I want a big disruptive monster there in the middle who can wreak havoc. Tyleik Williams was another guy, and a sneaky one later on. He won't be a high pick, but C.J. West out of Indiana was awesome. He's probably my wish list for one of those sneaky 4th-round picks we have floating around.
Greg Thompson, Cover One, doing a great job as always. Greg, tell everybody about your show and the content they can get over at Cover One.
Absolutely. So if you enjoy this, obviously when you're done listening to the guy's show here, you can find our work anywhere that you find wonderful content like this. You can go on YouTube, search for Cover One. You can find me on Twitter at Greg Thompson or any other social media platform. Come on over, hang out with us, and have a good time.
Greg, thanks for the time, man. Enjoy your weekend. Let's do it again soon.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
You got it. There's Greg Thompson, Cover One, breaking down the Bills' cap situation, talking about free agency. Lots coming up here on Monday for us to discuss in the sports bar.
Yeah, it's I am on board, by the way. If all things are equal, Danger, you could always use another defensive tackle. And it seems like one of those guys should be there at 30 or maybe just a slight move up.
It'd be great. Absolutely great. We'll see how it all shakes out. We'll see if we can keep some of the guys. I mean, it's funny that we're talking about Ty Johnson and Matt Collins as free agents that we hope that the Bills can retain. And we'll learn all of this as the roster gets constructed here over the course of the next 7 days or so as it starts to get constructed leading up to the draft. Happy Hour is next. We'll talk a little bit more about the Terrell Bernard deal. It's a move for the Buffalo Sabres. And we got the Amerks tonight, too.
I think the Amerks got jammed at the deadline. We should talk about that. The Sabres did not help the Amerks. Maybe somebody could point out, maybe they did, but at first blush, and I did not see Kulik got sent down either. So, no, we will not be getting back Yuri Kulik coming up for the Calder Cup run.
Okay, we'll get to that and more next. Your calls as well. Happy Hour on the way in the sports bar, 866-4326, 585-866-4FAN.
W239BF Rochester, the sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester. An Odyssey sports station. The Fan, Rochester. Sports update.
Bills locking up another core piece as we get ready for free agency next week. Terrell Bernard agrees on a 4-year contract extension. He'll be here through 2029. Steve Tasker on One Bills Live on What's Next.
Rousseau, you can give him that money now and save all that money on the cap. And presto changeo, now you go from being $8.5 million over the cap, and just with doing Rousseau, you could be $6 million under with one. And then, you go down the list. Knox, Milano, Dawkins, Ed, Vaughn, and Josh. Vaughn will get you under the cap himself if you just released him.
Amerks tonight in Laval. Andrew Mossbergs will have your call tonight beginning at 7. The Amerks losing Nicholas Aube-Kubel in a trade at the deadline today. He goes to the Rangers. NHL trade deadline saw Dylan Cousins get dealt from Buffalo to Ottawa along with defenseman Dennis Gilbert and a second-round pick. Buffalo getting back center Josh Norris. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader. The Fan, Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
The Buffalo Bills have reached an extension with Terrell Bernard.
We have a trade to announce.
I didn't realize that Reed was such a powerful figure in the music DJ space.
Mike Danger.
I know it might be a little bit radical. It's time for more violence in sports.
What?
A little bit of violence in our sports today can go a long way. That's what I want. Is that so bad? Am I asking for too much? Do we not remember these moments? Isn't that not why we love sports? Because we have these memories of guys getting their face kicked in? But we'll remember that moment. We need more of it.
Gene Battaglia.
I've never in my life gone into the month of March still with the Christmas lights up.
Whoa!
Not my fault. Not my fault, dude.
Whoa!
Not my fault. That's the last thing that hasn't been canceled, by the way. You called me white trash.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan.
You did.
Rochester.
I'm not taking it back either. Man, that would be weighing very heavily on my mind. That would be project number 1 for the weekend. Get up tomorrow morning. Hell, you might be able to get it done by the time you get home tonight. There's still a little bit of daylight by the time we get home tonight. By this time next week, you'll have a lot of daylight, but let's get those Christmas lights down, Gino. Your neighbors are complaining.
On a Friday night? No, my neighbors are not complaining.
Your
neighbors, your Goomba is there in your neighborhood. You mean to tell me that not a one still has their lights up?
Couldn't be my neighborhood.
No,
Could
lies.
not be my neighborhood.
Lies.
Yeah, you know what? Ask your better-looking and more successful brother who lives in my neighborhood if he sees any Christmas lights. The answer is no, buddy. We've got it together. We're buttoned up. Your neighbors are pointing and laughing at you. They're judging you. They're judging you harshly.
He is more successful, but how dare you? I am the better-looking one. One thing I want to just kind of correct, this came out as we went to break. Apparently in a paperwork move, the Amerks today get Yuri Kulik back, but it doesn't mean he's coming to Rochester, but he could be eligible for the AHL playoffs. The Sabres are not saying if they actually will send him to Rochester once Buffalo season's over.
Yeah, Kevin Adams speaking to the media just a few moments ago.
Oh, who cares?
And kind of, relaying to the, Sabres media what exactly he did with the team here at the trade deadline.
Oh, who cares?
And who's gone and who's coming back and who's here and we're not good enough and we need to be better. And me and Terry Pagula have conversations all the time. And
oh, who cares?
I don't care. Do not care. I'm done.
Brad Marchand going from Boston to Florida?
Oh, who cares?
Trade deadline.
Casey Middlestack going from Colorado to Boston?
Oh, who cares?
No. Nicholas Aube-Kubel going from the Amerks to the New York Rangers.
All right, that means something. The Amerks are good. I'm paying attention.
Look, as selfishly as I want Aube-Kubel here, he did his job, and whether or not the defenseman they got back, Brandstrom, I don't know if he's coming to Rochester or not. I haven't seen that yet.
It's going to be tough seeing Marchand playing for a team other than Boston. That will be a little bit weird.
16 years.
Yeah.
16, yeah.
It's going to be a little bit weird seeing that rat play for the team that ironically throws rats on the ice when they win games. Makes all the sense in the world that he would end up in Florida. So the Sabres move on from Dylan Cousins. There's your trade deadline Sabres headline.
And thus, the Sabres portion of the sports bar has concluded.
Oh, who cares?
We do have Amherst hockey tonight, and these are important games against Laval, who's looking up at Rochester in the standings in the north. 7:05 tonight, we'll have that call.
Does this become like a story tonight? I'm asking seriously. Like what we saw at the Four Nations tournament. Well, you're in the Montreal suburb of Quebec. I don't know if you heard this or not. They're not really high on Americans. And here is the team with the American crest right across. In fact, they're called the Americans.
Literally called the Americans.
They're literally called the Americans.
We're going to boo the Americans. Not just the national anthem. We're going to boo the Americans. Yeah, like it could be a hostile environment. But you know what? As we've heard from head coach Mike Leone, they've played well up there. And they have no problem embracing that hostile environment.
You know, if you look at our away record this year, we've played in a lot of tough buildings. We've been really good in Laval, and it's just you got to have poise and composure in those situations to stay disciplined and especially stay out of the box and just stick together. And our guys have done a great job of that, of just playing and, you know, one shift at a time mentality.
One last bit on hockey before we shift gears and talk about what's happened here with the Buffalo Bills in the last 24 hours.
Shame on you.
Is there no worse feeling as a fan than walking away when your team is down only to find out they actually won? I'm embarrassed. I feel shame. I feel disgusting. I can't live with myself. This is me growing up in the Paris of the Prairie, East Grand Forks, Minnesota, graduate 1993, to see my guys in the Minnesota State High School hockey tournament, semifinal, down 5-2 in the second, while I'm on the air here hosting the show with you, Gino. I just shut it down. I'm like, you know what? I should be more focused on what we're talking about here. We should be talking about Greg Thompson. I get a text message maybe like 20 minutes ago from one of my buddies in Minnesota just saying yes, multiple exclamation points. They were down 5-2 in the second, and they scored 5 unanswered. The East Grand Forks Green Wave advancing to the Minnesota State High School hockey final against St. Cloud Cathedral. I'm a little torn because St. Cloud is where I was working and living before I moved to Rochester.
No, there's no torn.
I'm not really torn.
You're not really torn. You're just saying.
I do like St. Cloud, though. St. Cloud was a nice town to live in. I liked St. Cloud a lot. But, yeah, I mean, Green Wave. Let's go. What are we talking?
No, and should you be ashamed? You should take credit. Like, if you don't turn that on, right? Like, isn't this how our minds work?
Right. Yeah, it was all me.
It was all you.
Too much pressure because the guy in New York that graduated from there, you know, how many years ago, 30-plus years ago, was watching. So once he stopped watching, it was like a weight lifted off their chest. Then they started to play lights up. Yeah, that's how it goes.
There are people like that, like, oh, the Bills are struggling. I'm going to walk around the block. I'm going to turn this off.
I'm going to change jerseys is my favorite. We're going to change clothes. It's because I'm wearing the wrong jersey. I gotta go change. What am I doing? I'm not even wearing the right color. I gotta get a different color on.
The closest thing I could have to that, and I don't think it's the same, but when Syracuse played that, what was it, 6 overtime game against you guys, and they won, I fell asleep.
Ironically, I was in Minnesota that weekend for a bachelor party. I remember that saga and going from bar to bar for the bachelor party and just making sure that every bar had that game on because it was something like we had never seen before. It was amazing. I don't remember much of that night, but I do remember looking for the Syracuse game at every bar that we went to as we were clowning around in Minneapolis.
See, this is what guys do. We mark time by sports.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
We do, and we remember. This is part of what I was saying yesterday about, look, I'm not saying I want more injuries and I want people to, I just think a little bit of violence, it makes it memorable. I will always remember watching those 3 fights from the Four Nations tournament, flying into Tampa on our American Airlines, flight in from Charlotte, watching it on my phone and being like, oh my God, hockey's back. Now, it's not back because the NHL is the NHL, but that moment was marked by that moment in time was marked by the Tkachuk brothers going crazy, right? You're right. We absolutely mark time by sports. It's what we love about it. It's everything that we love about it. The Bills have extended Terrell Bernard.
Here's my position on this, because we could debate the numbers, and honestly, I think for the majority of our audience, you would glaze over, okay? Basically, 4 years, $50 million. Linebacker, is that a position you need to pay that much? Terrell Bernard, the positives, he's a good player. He comes up with big plays. The negative, and he's the team captain. Downside, he's a little undersized and he gets hurt a lot. I would rather pay the money for one of, finger quote, your guys here.
Yeah.
So if we're going to err on the caution, I don't want to overpay for a free agent. Where I want to pay for it, Terrell Bernard, leader on the team, means a lot, knows what's going on with this defense. Is this defense better with Terrell Bernard at middle linebacker, or the guy was before him? Everybody's going to answer it's Terrell Bernard.
Correct. And to see him make the play that he made in the Baltimore game, that alone, you could be like, okay, maybe he is worthy. I mean, if you make more plays like that.
Yeah, I know you were somewhere, but watching that Houston game where, okay, he drops in the coverage, suckers C.J. Stroud into a bad throw. Like, Terrell Bernard has the football smarts. Can he stay healthy? And again, I don't know how this is laid out. You're saying that half of this is basically guaranteed 4 years.
$25.2 million in guaranteed money.
Okay.
And if you break it down, $12.5 million on average per year. So putting him fifth, I want to say, in the NFL in terms of positional rankings.
All these teams, in Jacksonville, the latest today, we're releasing Evan Ingram, like a lot of teams are making their finger quote cuts right now, so you can have a head start on free agency. We haven't gotten to that point for the Buffalo Bills yet. Can we connect dots? Are we led to believe the reason we haven't done that yet is because there's a negotiation with Von Miller going on? Because if you were going to move on from Von Miller, wouldn't you have done it by now? Wouldn't Friday afternoon be the perfect time to just kind of, okay, we're just going to put that out there right now? The more I think about this, Danger, maybe ultimately they decide to do that. I would think that Brandon Beane would like Von Miller maybe back on the team, but here's the number. You think about it. And the you think about it portion, you got until, actually, it's not Monday, it's Wednesday to make that move.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of you think about it's out there right now. I think Greg Rousseau is a you think about it. I think Benford is a you think about it. I mean, Benford getting $20 million a year. Crazy. But that's the going rate for a corner in the NFL.
Danger, that might be the guy that I really like, but corner's the position that maybe we're a little gun shy there with what happened to Tre'Davious White because, yeah, once you get to that second contract, I'm not so sure. To me, Bernard, yes, I understand that. Shakir, yes. Rousseau, absolutely.
Now, I don't know that you're going to get Rousseau. I think what Greg said last hour, Greg Thompson from Cover One who joined us last hour, makes all the sense in the world. If you're Greg Rousseau and you're Greg Rousseau's agent,
you're going the free agency.
Right. You could say the Bills are offering us $25 million a year for Greg Rousseau. And Greg Rousseau's agent could be like, you can get 30 next year in free agency. Easy. You can get 32. I have a hard time seeing Greg Rousseau taking what the Bills are offering if they're offering him something now versus what he could get if he hits the market.
There was one take I like from Thompson. Greg Thompson joined us last hour, that if you can target guys who aren't trying to strike it rich, because the Bills are not in the position. Look, Myles Garrett, whatever, that's an outlier. But if you can get the guy that has already been paid and now you're going to get him at a discount, what the Patriots used to do all the time.
Sure.
I'm on board with that. And Kirk might have fit that bill. I'm not Joey Bosa. No, I'm not really high on that. But if there's somebody sitting out there right now that you could get at a discount.
Jonathan Allen, defensive tackle, the Washington Commanders.
That would fit.
It was informed by the team that he will be released. He finished last year with 3 sacks, 3 tackles for a loss. He only played 8 games, started 7 because he was injured for most of 2024. There's a name for you. And when we asked Greg about DK Metcalf and what it might take to pry him away from Seattle, his take was that if the Bills offered a second, it would be the best offer that Seattle would get for DK Metcalf. You have that second, that extra second that I mean, it's the Stephon Diggs pick, right?
Yeah.
You're basically getting DK Metcalf for what you gave up for Stephon Diggs.
But you're not doing that without the contract, though.
Right.
That's also part of the equation. All in favor say aye. Who would trade a second-round pick for DK Metcalf?
Me.
Aye.
I would, yes.
Done.
Go.
Done.
Get it done.
Done.
Tomorrow. Let's go.
And furthermore, the idea that Cleveland has screwed up, I'd say something a little more vulgar, I'm not allowed to, has messed up the cap so bad that really you've got to, the idea that they would trade, like legitimately, the reason they may not be trading a Myles Garrett before is like they actually have to kind of wait on this.
They can't, right.
Yeah.
That the cap hit would be so extreme before June 1st that they would struggle to field a team. The team would be just undrafted guys, undrafted free agents all over the place, all the dead cap, just a mess. Good getting that explanation from Greg Thompson, and maybe Garrett gets dealt, but it's after June 1st, and if it's after June 1st, that's good because then you're dealing with picks next season, not picks in this year's draft. But you're right, the Browns continue to be the Browns, and because of the cap hell they find themselves with the worst trade in the history of the NFL and that awful Deshaun Watson contract, their hands are tied. They can't do a lot.
I wrote down, this will be something we'll run back here this time next week, ready, next Friday, because I think we'll have the answer to a lot of this stuff. All these, really, they're C-minus moves, but they're all going to be the headline moves coming up here because the quarterbacks, as we always pay attention to. I see Darnold going back to the Vikings, Aaron Rodgers to the Giants, Justin Fields to the Steelers. Steelers actually bring in Daniel Jones because you're not going to trust just Justin Fields on that. Russell Wilson ending up with the Jets. Danger has Darnold to Tennessee, Rodgers to the Giants, Fields to the Steelers, Wilson to the Raiders, and Jones to Indianapolis. And I'm not allowed to bet you. So this is just a general.
You don't want to just take one of them and bet one of them?
Which one?
You can be bought.
No, I can't. I'm just saying in theory.
Darnold. Is he a Viking or is he not? I say no.
You say he's not going back to Minnesota. Some team will be like, okay, we're going to pay this.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
You say Tennessee, and I'm just wondering if we're applying Bill's logic here, meaning, hey, we've got to sell this. We've got to deliver hope. I don't know if the new stadium there is all connected to the team's performance. I think the new stadium there is, hey, we're going to get Super Bowls, maybe a Final Four and really good concerts, and that's where our football team will be playing. There's enough wealth in Tennessee, in Nashville, not to worry about.
It's
selling.
become a transient community, much like Tampa, and I just feel like that if you're local, yeah, you're a fan, but you're more like getting people there because it's an NFL game and it's a new shiny toy in Nashville. Nashville, in Tennessee, by the way, the Titans with over $63 million in cap space. The Vikings have plenty of cap space as well. I just there's a part of me that says that a team is going to pay him more than what Minnesota might be offering him, given what they have waiting in the chamber at J.J. McCarthy. I think they'd be crazy to let him walk, but I almost feel like Darnold's gonna go somewhere else.
I can't even call them bold takes here. What we do every kickoff season. It's just let's put this down on paper and we'll look back next week. See how close we were.
I mean, it'd be fun if Russell Wilson reunited with Pete Carroll, right? That would be fun.
Do you think Pete Carroll really wants that?
I don't know. I mean, if anybody knows how to get something out of Russell Wilson, it's Pete Carroll. Nobody else has really gotten anything out of him.
Would Pete Carroll trade for Geno Smith? That's a big rumor.
Yeah, we had Corbin Smith on from the Locked On Seahawks podcast in the 3 o'clock hour to talk a little bit about some of these rumors around Seattle. The idea that Pete Carroll spent an hour on a plane with Seattle's GM and they're chopping it up a little bit. Maybe there is something to that. There is something in the works. Pete Carroll already doing work there with the Raiders, and I'm sure Tom Brady has something to say about all of it as well. It'll be interesting. Monday will be a fun afternoon here in the sports bar with legal tampering getting underway.
Legal tampering. We'll talk to some of our Bills experts coming up Monday. So look, you're going to be busy at work. We'll fill you in on what is happening because who's going to be a former Buffalo Bill? Like, will we see Rasul Douglas? Will we see DeMar Hamlin? There's some Mac Hollins.
Yeah.
Ty Johnson. Of all the free agents that the Buffalo Bills have, the unrestricted ones, we've been focused on the guys who are going to be unrestricted next year. And the Bills locking them up, Shakir and Cook and blah, blah, blah. The guy I want the Bills first and foremost isn't Mac Hollins. It's Ty Johnson.
I want them both. I think Hollins on special teams is great, and you could do a lot worse with him in your wide receiver depth chart, given what we saw out of him last year. I mean, for him to lead the team in receiving touchdowns, right?
What?
It's kind of insane. Nobody had that at the beginning of the year. Mac Hollins was always just a guy.
Well, that was the plan all offseason. We were like, oh, boy, how are they replacing Diggs? If we recall some of the names, Chase Claypool, or who was the guy from Detroit? Like, we had some guys here that, okay, let's just bring them in and throw a lot of stuff up against the wall.
Yeah.
KJ Hamler was a thing for a hot minute.
Yeah, I think we'll have more of that this offseason and preseason. I would love Hollins just for his contributions on special teams. You still need that replacement for Steph Diggs. I know that Khalil Shakir getting extended is great, but you still need that guy. It's not Coleman. You still need that guy.
I think that you and I can say, boy, that was the best offense we've seen in Buffalo. That's the way you wanted to design, but you can't stand pat in this league. You need to kind of evolve, and the way you evolve is you get a feel. Now, Danger, if they don't get this in free agency, if you go off the board, and this is the year they actually do take a receiver in the first round, they didn't take Coleman in the first round, technically. This receiver from Texas, the burner there.
Oh, yeah, Golden.
Yeah.
Or Bond. Either of them. I think Golden with more size, but for sure. And another note from Greg Thompson's conversation last hour, and if you missed that, you can get it wherever you get your podcasts. Just search out the Sports Bar. That includes the free-to-download Odyssey app. We asked him bluntly about James Cook and $15 million a year, and you know, Greg's take is look at the pattern, and you know exactly what they're going to do. Let Tennessee or let Carolina or the Raiders or a team like that pay James Cook his $15 million a year. Don't be surprised when the Bills draft a running back this year, and that running back works in tandem with Ray Davis and Ty Johnson if he's on the team, and James Cook, or you prepared to lose Ty Johnson. You got Ray Davis, your rookie running back, and James Cook is gone at the end of next year.
That's why I think that maybe if there is an offer like a second-round pick, I don't think there would be a third-round pick. The Bills would look at that seriously, even with James Cook on the end of this rookie contract, I should say.
Let's get to a round of shots next on the Fan.
Yeah, so some of the things, not a good night if you stayed up with the Knicks there. We will talk a little NBA. Mark Cuban, for the first time, the former Mavs owner, talking about the Luka Doncic deal. And also we'll stick with basketball here. You know, just technology in the NBA. This is kind of a cool thing. We'll get to those stories and more. And there was hockey news today too.
Last call is coming up before 6 o'clock. If you want to have the final word in the Sports Bar, we love your calls. 585-866-4FAN, 866-4326.
The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Buffalo Bills and linebacker Terrell Bernard agree on an extension. 4 years, $50 million tacked on. Bernard will be in Buffalo through 2029. Tough scene tonight for the Hammers. They're up in Laval. Head coach Mike Leone knows it's going to be a hostile environment.
You know, if you look at our away record this year, we've played in a lot of tough buildings. We've been really good in Laval, and it's just you got to have poise and composure in those situations to stay disciplined and especially stay out of the box and just stick together. And our guys have done a great job of that, of just playing and, you know, one shift at a time mentality.
Some moves for the Amherst today. We will get to that in shots coming up. Our coverage of Amherst hockey tonight begins at 7. From the Sabres, Dylan Cousins gets dealt from Buffalo to Ottawa, along with defenseman Dennis Gilbert and a second-round pick. Buffalo getting center Josh Norris. Gene Battaglia on the sports leader, the Fan Rochester.
The sports leader, 95.7 FM, and streaming online at thefanrochester.com and the Odyssey app. This is The Fan Rochester.
Happy hour continues on The Fan in the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia. It's time for a round of shots.
So the big news, I think, for Amherst fans is the possibility. Can you imagine Yuri Kulik being back down with the Amherst this postseason? He wasn't technically sent to Rochester, but you're going to see this transaction. It's a paperwork move. In Danger, it does not guarantee that actually the Sabres will send him to the Amherst once Buffalo season's over. But the one thing I can tell you about Yuri Kulik in the postseason, wasn't good for the Amherst the last few years. So the idea that, well, he's earned the right as an NHLer, you know what? You're still under contract. Come down here, help the Amherst out. That is something to keep an eye on. So at least that possibility is out there. Now, on the downside for the Amherst today, the team did trade away Nick Aube-Kubel, the former Colorado Avalanche player who's been helping out the Sabres here. But in exchange, the Amherst get a defenseman. His name is Eric Bronstrom, and Bronstrom will be reporting to Rochester apparently next week. So,
okay.
Yeah, so I'm not
already leading the AHL in umlauts. His name has not one but two sets of umlauts.
See, I'm more of a tilde fan than an umlaut.
Now you've lost me. I'm not that bright, Gene.
A tilde. That's like, when, mañana.
That's what that's called?
That's a tilde, yeah.
That's a tilde, man.
Dude, your mother's from Spain.
That's what I'm telling you. I'm sorry. I'm not that bright. You would think.
You're bright the same. The umlaut?
I took German 1 year in middle school. I took Spanish 2 years in high school. I had better grades in German class than I did in Spanish class. And my mother never forgave me. Never forgave me.
What was your mother's maiden name?
Marcos.
Mrs. Marcos.
Trust me.
Somewhere she's looking down at you, shaking her head right now.
Absolutely. Just cloaked in failure. I didn't fulfill her dream of becoming a priest, which is what she wanted me to be. No, I don't think I'm going to be a priest. That's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen. Is this a big deal, or is it a Francesa danger? Dylan Cousins, after not standing up for his teammate last night, he had been rumors.
Who cares?
Yeah, Cousins now is in Ottawa. For the record, we go to our Ottawa expert here in the sports bar. That would be the Dandalorian.
Such a weirdo. Just roots for the weirdest teams just out of nowhere. He's a Mets fan, one. He's a Vikings fan. He's a Sens fan.
I'm fine with all that, but when he chooses Belleville over the Amherst, that actually pisses me off.
I have a problem with that.
That's wrong.
But he is
wrong.
the Dandalorian. He is the bounty hunter, the finest audio in the galaxy. We love him. We can't do it without him.
He hates this deal.
He hates this deal.
Yeah, Josh Norris as a center was getting paid by Ottawa, but Josh Norris is also like the best friend of Brady Tkachuk. And Tkachuk was asked about it, was on the verge of tears talking about it.
Who cares?
You don't care.
I don't care.
Teacher just don't know.
I'm just so down on I'm so down on this team. I'm so every move they make, I'm like, what difference does it make? It's not going to matter. Who cares?
Well, for the Sabres, we got to be getting close to the tragic number, right? Like when they get eliminated, I can't figure that out. 6-5 was the final last night at Tampa Bay.
This is good, though. We want greatness, and this now is 5 straight losses. So keep it up, boys. Let's get
to dueling 13s.
Yeah, I want to see us get to double digits again. We can do it. Let's really focus. Dial it in. Let's go.
Yeah. Tomorrow in Florida, 6 o'clock for the coverage on 96.5 WCMF. But as we'd like to say, listen anyway.
Yes.
Jalen Brunson led the Knicks with 39 points, 10 boards. But in the closing minutes of overtime in the loss to the Lakers, he rolled his ankle. The severity is unknown, but the word is he's not going to be available for the rest of this road trip at least. Brunson leading the Knicks in scoring with a 26-point-per-game average. The Knicks next in action Monday night in Sacramento.
You know, that dude's tough, though, man. Even if he rolls an ankle and misses a game or two, I mean, you want that guy ready for the postseason. You want those guys ready to go.
Blessing in disguise, you're saying?
It might be. Might be. Give him a few days. Let him heal up.
Here's the thing. Like, oh, my gosh, what does this mean for the Knicks? They're not catching Cleveland.
No, they're the
Boston.
3 seed.
They're the 3 seed.
Yep. They're the 3. They're locked in. You know that they're locked in. If it for the way he grinds his players, Tibbs should let him heal. Let him be ready. And, you know, for what it's worth, Brunson might not want to. Brunson might be the guy that's like, no, I want to be out there. Let's go. Which I love, but it might be a blessing in disguise.
Finally, we've heard from Mavs owner, check that, former Mavs owner, Mark Cuban. No, he wasn't given a heads up on the trade that sent Luka Doncic to Los Angeles. Cuban, his take is like ours, Danger. The Mavs should have gotten more. Cuban putting out there 4 unprotected first-round picks should have been part of the package. When asked if he himself would have made the trade, Cuban said, it doesn't matter.
It's true. He's right. It doesn't matter, and I don't know why people are asking. I know why people are asking his opinion, but it doesn't matter. His opinion doesn't matter. You're just like us. You're a fan. You can say what you want to say, but that's his guy, and he can't be happy. His guy is now a Laker.
Well, you made a lot of money selling that team.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird though? I thought that guy, right? Like what was the reason Mark Cuban sold the Mavericks? Like, has there been how many owners so closely associated with the team because they bought the team because they were a big fan?
I just view the guy as a businessman. He's an investor, and he got his return on investment. Cashed out when he needed to cash out. I mean,
probably still loves the team, won a championship a decade ago.
Yeah. You know, now more time to deal with other stuff, more time to live, less time worrying about what kind of haul you're going to get for Luka in a trade. So I mean, that's the only reasoning I can put behind it. Is guy's just an entrepreneurial heart, and he wants to cash out on his investment.
We've seen these glass courts in the NBA, the LED lighting, making it look like the game is being played like a video game. Saw it like in the during the play-in tournament or whatever it was. Not the play-in tournament. What do they call it now?
The NBA Cup.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a more practical use for this technology. The Chicago Bulls practicing on a glass court yesterday, one in which, well, it doesn't look like a normal court, except the company selling this product actually attached the glass court to an iPad where the coach has a telestrator that can design a play. You can write exactly right on the court, point to where you got to go.
Oh, and for during practice.
Yeah.
That's sick. That's awesome. Now I'm thinking to myself, all right, what could you do if you had that kind of access to a glass court and the court basically becomes a screen? You're playing NBA 2K on the literally playing it on the court, looking at the court and playing it on the court. That's sick.
Yeah, I mean, how like this is happening in our lifetime, or is it happening 5 years from now that all NBA courts are going to have this LED lighting, and we go to a commercial and there's the commercial rolling.
Right. You have ads on the court. I mean, I guess that's an advancement. That's innovation. I don't love how the courts are lit up for the NBA Cup. I kind of miss just the old parquet floors. I'm okay with that. I know. Yeah.
Mike Danger. Yeah, it's the Rochester Royals. Mike Danger never wait a second. You think that we didn't have an NBA team, but
correct.
You're dishing out that take.
Yeah, dude, 50 is hitting me hard. I don't know what to say. I'm becoming crankier and older and more. I'm sorry.
Well, that's fine. Like the midlife crisis is when you go the other direction, and all of a sudden you start try and act like you're young and you're not. Like if you show up like driving some sports car or
yeah, I can make a safe assumption that that'll never happen. That part won't happen. The whole acting young thing, I've never grown up, and I'm not going to grow up, so you're just going to have to deal with that. Yeah. But, yeah, aside from that, you're not going to see me pulling up in a Corvette with personalized license plates anytime soon. That's not happening. There you go. A round of shots in the sports bar. We'll have last call next. You can pull up a stool and join us. 585-866-4FAN if you want to have the final word in the sports bar. We'll take you up to JR Sport Brief at 6 o'clock. Amerks Hockey coming up tonight at 7 o'clock. And your call's next on The Fan.
Sports excitement. They've raised the bar on Rochester Sports Talk. You're in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Hey, well, we got a second here. Last call at 866-4326. If you want to join us, 585-866-4FAN. Dish out some thank yous for the week. It's been a fun week in the Sports Bar. Dan DeLorean, of course, our bounty hunter of the finest audio in the galaxy, who helps set us up for a great show every afternoon. Also does a great job producing One Bills Live here locally for us. Thanks to everybody checking us out on our YouTube channel at The Fan Rochester, on Twitch at The Fan Rochester. I humbly ask that you like, subscribe, engage with the pages, put a little wind in the sails. We love seeing that. And you can also find the Sports Bar wherever you get your podcasts. That includes the free-to-download Odyssey app, AUDACY. If you missed our conversation from last hour with Cover One's Greg Thompson, as we talk about Bills free agency moves and all things Bills cap, you can find that wherever you get your shows.
And I'd like to thank everybody listening. One shout I want to give out to Greg, who gave us this thermometer.
Oh, yeah, one of our regulars.
Yeah, when we were going through our winter of hell here where the heat wasn't working, and now they do have it working. It only took...
Hold on a second. Is that thermostat working? Is it functional, or is it still...
No, I mean, this is saying 72 in here, but we have the door open.
I don't think that they fixed anything. I think that we're just benefiting from warmer temperatures now. And I think we figured out by leaving the door open, we actually get some of the warmer air outside of our studio into our studio. It's not lost on me that during break you walk in and out of studio. That's called circulation, buddy. We're getting that air circulation in here. We're bringing in some of that hot air. Plus, I've got plenty of hot air to give out every afternoon from 3 to 6.
I think back to like the end of the Bill season where I'm not seeing our breath here in the studio, but I'm like, boy, this is really not great.
A big thank you to our new landlords.
For heat.
Yeah.
Heat. Your neighbors have it, and you can too. Yes. Amherst hockey coming up tonight, 7 o'clock. Yuri Cooley could potentially come back to the Amherst. That's very tasty. Not a fan of Abe Kubel getting dealt today. I don't know too much about this defenseman. We can explore that. Mossbrooks is up in Laval tonight. And if you're driving around, I would just encourage you, see what this atmosphere is like.
Yeah, we almost need to have Mossbrooks on with us after this weekend just to paint a picture, because he's going right into the Lions' Den. And, the team is literally called the Americans. What do we think is going to happen? It's going to be hostile. And let's see if the Amherst can keep Laval at bay here and remain atop the North Division standings.
Mike Danger, do you know why they're called the Americans? Because when they started out, their affiliate in the original 6 was Montreal.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe you. I think that was just made up. There is no way.
What? No, I'm not making that up.
Totally making it up.
I am not making that up.
What are you going to tell me next? That we had an NBA team? Stop it, man. You're just making stuff up.
Just throwing facts out there willy-nilly.
Yeah, really. I mean, come on. We're supposed to be professionals here. People come to us. We're a trusted source. And you're going to come up with some nonsense off the top of your head? Oh.
You know, the Hammers
do you know why they're called?
Do
you know why they're called the San Antonio Spurs? Because they used to be the Mexican City Burritos back in the day. And then they became the San Antonio Spurs. See, I can play this game too, Gene. That's not, you're just making stuff up.
I'm not making that up.
You're going to tell, you're just going to keep piling on the lies? You're going to tell us that we had an NFL team?
We had an NFL team. We had a Subway.
Get out of here. Not in my lifetime, pal.
We're T-minus 8 minutes from box wine time, buddy.
That's good. Yeah. Good. We got a good weekend in front of us. Yeah. We lose that hour of sleep, but we gain that hour of daylight, and I think a lot of us, I just want to see the sun a little bit more than we've been seeing it for the last few months, obviously, and I think I'll gladly trade that 1 hour of sleep.
Monday's show will be epic because we're going to have all this news to react to in real time. We'll invite in some of our favorites here. Ryan Talbot, NewYorkUpstate.com will be joining us. Nate Geary from WGR, Buffalo Bills Radio Network, as who knows where the world is at on Monday, Danger. I cannot wait, as to me, this begins the next football season.
man, next week is going to be great too. We got tournaments. We got. It's starting. You're right. We're there. We're getting there every day. We're a step closer, and man, I can't wait. Good weekend ahead of us.
20 days away from the start of Major League Baseball season.
Good stuff. Oh, when is the Japan series? That's coming up here.
That's
this weekend.
16th. So
okay,
yeah,
so next weekend.
Next weekend. Yeah.
All right, very good. A big thank you to you for listening. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The free to download Odyssey app or your smart device when you ask it to play 95.7 The Fan. Gino and I return Monday afternoon starting at 3 o'clock with a brand new episode, and we'll see what the world looks like. JR Sport Brief is next. Amerks Hockey coming up at 7 o'clock as they take on the Rocket in Laval. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks for listening to The Fan Rochester.